Welcome back to our channel. Today we will explore a new case. The case of Jamie Osuna. The police discovered the body of a woman in a hotel room. A few days before this, a man named Jamie Osuna had called his ex-girlfriend to confess to a crime, which helped the police capture a dangerous individual, later known as the man with 1,000 faces. Jamie Osuna was born on 1988 in Bakersfield, California, USA. His life was marked by violence and cruelty from the start. His mother became pregnant at 19 by her abusive boyfriend, who was 21. His father was physically violent towards his mother, causing hearing damage to him, the unborn child. When Jamie was born, his father abandoned him in the car seat because he wouldn't stop crying. Eventually, his mother left the abusive man and then met another man. They had another child, but both Jamie and his brother suffered abuse from this man, with Jamie enduring the worst of it. He was treated terribly. He was fed on the floor like a dog, tied to a tree, and physically punished. His grandfather wanted nothing to do with him, and his uncle often hit him with a brick, while his mother was consistently cruel. This led Jamie to harbor deep resentment towards her for not protecting him. He dropped out of school in the 9th grade and soon began displaying violent behavior. At 15, he attacked another boy, marking the first of several incidents that would land him in prison. When Jamie was 20, he attended a birthday party for a boy who was turning 16. At the party, he noticed his friend's mother, Joelele Castellano, who was a 37-year-old woman he found very attractive. During the celebration, Jamie got into an altercation with another boy and used a knife. Although the injury was minor, he was sent back to prison because he was on parole. In prison, Jamie started writing letters to Joelle. To his surprise, she responded, and they began corresponding. Despite having only met once at the party, Joelle fell in love with Jamie. Joelle was so devoted to him that she arranged for his release once he completed his sentence. She waited outside the prison for several hours, and when Jamie finally emerged, she was shocked to see that he had gotten tattoos on his face, including one that resembled the Joker's smile. Initially, this made her uncomfortable, but she soon accepted it. That night, they spent together in a hotel, and she became pregnant with Jamie's first child. Joelle felt very happy during her pregnancy and enjoyed being with the man she loved. However, after some time, Jamie began to reveal his true nature. Jamie had a keen interest in philosophy and psychology. Joelle encouraged him, suggesting that with study, he could have a bright future. However, things took a dark turn when Jamie began to show controlling and cruel behavior. He tried to dominate Joelle's every action, but she resisted. Their arguments escalated, eventually becoming violent. Despite Joelle being pregnant, Jamie showed no concern for her well-being. After their child was born, she reported his violent behavior to the police, which led to his imprisonment. Upon his release, Jamie pleaded with Joelle for another chance, and she reluctantly agreed. Unfortunately, he fell into banned substance use, and his violence worsened, culminating in threats against her. Once again, Joelle reported him, and he returned to prison. Jamie was released on Halloween night in 2011, but he had transformed. His face was covered in tattoos intended to frighten Joelle, who now wanted nothing to do with him. He began to harass her, making threats over the phone and stalking her from the shadows. This harassment continued for several days until Joelle contacted the police, prompting Jamie to go into hiding. One day, Joelle received a call from him. He confessed to attacking a girl in El Morocco motel. Her name was Yvette Pena. Yvette had her first child as a teenager. Compounding her difficulties, her partner began to show inappropriate interest in her. Over the years, she struggled with substance abuse and encountered legal problems, resulting in the loss of custody of all 6 of her children. Following this, she moved into a poorly regarded motel, the only affordable option as she tried to overcome her addiction and hoped to reunite with her children. However, Jamie's actions created barriers to this dream. After Jamie reported an incident at El Morocco Motel to Joelle, she contacted the police to confirm if there was a report of an attack on a woman there. The police informed her that no such report existed, leaving Joelle feeling uneasy. She then called the motel to inquire about any similar incidents, but they declined to provide any information. A few days later, a staff member at the motel discovered a mutilated body in one of the rooms while cleaning. The scene was horrific, with bloodstains everywhere, indicating that the killer had been extremely brutal. The motel staff called the police, who remembered that Jamie had contacted Joelle. So they reached out to her for a statement and assistance in locating him. With her help, they found Jamie hiding at his grandparents' house, where he was arrested and taken for questioning. During questioning, Jamie denied any involvement, claiming that he had called Joelle just to scare her. He maintained that he had not killed anyone and only wanted to get his ex-girlfriend's attention to rekindle their relationship. The police found his story hard to believe, especially considering the timing while they awaited the coroner's report on the body. Jamie remained in custody. The woman's body was so badly mutilated that it took 8 months for investigators to receive the coroner's report. The examination revealed that she had been dead for 5 days before being found, which coincided with the day Jamie called Joelle. Due to decomposition, the coroner faced challenges in the examination, but they determined that the woman had been assaulted with multiple stab wounds and cuts inflicted by scissors. The cause of death was asphyxiation, suggesting she was alive and aware during the attack. Additionally, male fingerprints and DNA were found at the scene. When compared to Jamie's DNA, they matched. Jamie claimed he had consensual contact with her that night, explaining the presence of his DNA, but the police did not believe him. He was then sent to prison to await trial. Even while in prison, Jamie continued to harass Joelle. He sent her threatening letters written in blood and once mailed her a dead rat. He even discovered the address of the prosecutor handling his case and sent him several threatening letters as well. It was clear that he was not mentally stable. Jamie filed a complaint against Joelle, claiming that she was abusive toward their son, which led the authorities to pass the complaint to the police, triggering an investigation into Joelle. She was arrested, but a week later, it was concluded that no violence had occurred, and she was released. Despite this, Jamie had achieved his goal of making Joelle suffer. The trial for Jamie began in 2017. Throughout his time in prison, he maintained his innocence, but 3 days before the trial, he gave an interview to a journalist who worked for a local radio station. She wanted to learn about Jamie's life. In the interview, Jamie appeared with numerous tattoos covering his arms, face, and neck, most of which imitated the character of the Joker. One of the last tattoos was a 5-pointed inverted star in the center of his forehead, a symbol known in pop culture as satanic. However, Jamie was never a Satanist, and of course the murder was not ritualistic. During the interview, Jamie, with an absolutely calm face, stated that he had taken a life and that his only motive was a desire to do so. He simply wanted to seize the opportunity. Jamie recounted horrific details that were not published, as the journalist and her editor came to an agreement that some things should remain confidential. She felt that these details were too gruesome and should not be revealed to Yvette's family. Thus, they only aired certain fragments of the interview, in which Jamie spoke about his childhood and not much about the murder of Yvette. Jamie mentioned that he had been interested in cruelty since childhood, starting with insects and rats. Once, when he was left home alone, a pet ended up in the freezer and later in the oven. He said that he derived a lot of pleasure from that day and realized that he enjoyed it. Cruel, horrific acts brought him more pleasure than anything else in the world. This seemed monstrous to everyone. He also mentioned that due to the violence of his stepfather in childhood, he lost the ability to feel pain and happiness. His classmates joked and told stories that made them laugh, but he couldn't even smile, even when he knew it was funny. He never felt the need to express this through a smile. Jamie also said that he did not feel joy when something good happened to him, such as receiving a high grade in school. He enjoyed feeling pain, as it pleased him. Besides, Jaime stated that Yvette was not his first victim. The previous year he had killed a man and a woman. He did not provide any details, only stating that the woman was 32 and the man was 27, and that he had hidden the evidence very well so that no one would find out. He claimed that the events were intentional and that he left evidence on purpose so that he would be sent to prison, as he no longer wanted to be in society. He mentioned that there were other people like him who had been his mentors. He spent so much time with the corpse of one of his first victims that the body began to decompose. Jamie looked at the corpse to ensure that the image would remain in his memory for a long time. He also implied in the interview that his choice of victims was not based on age, gender, or occupation. What mattered to him was only that they were human. Jamie claimed that he did this by himself and was proud of it, regardless of the consequences. Perhaps one of the most important phrases he said was, "I have no sympathy. I am a sadist. I will do it again, again." The trial against Jamie began, and the prosecution presented a wealth of evidence, including photographs from the crime scene. Yvette's family was present in court and was warned that they would see some unpleasant images. Yvette's sister even said that it was impossible to identify Yvette's body in the photographs, and it still affected her. Despite being accused of a serious crime, Jamie laughed loudly, spoke with a smirk, and looked at Yvette's family without being able to behave seriously throughout all the court sessions. Of course, this is upsetting not only to the victim's family, but to everyone present. After many trials, Jamie's lawyer suggested a plea deal. If he pleaded guilty, he would avoid a death sentence, which would bring some relief to Yvette's family and others affected. March 28, 2017, Jaime Osuna pleads guilty to 6 charges. On May 14, 2017, during a hearing in which he taunted Yvette's family, smirking and rolling his eyes as they described the torment he had caused in their lives, Jaime was sentenced to life in prison without parole, along with mandatory rehabilitation therapy. He gave a thumbs up as Judge John S. Summers handed down the sentence. He agreed to the terms, believing that it would not significantly impact him. Jamie was then transferred to a state prison in Courtroom, located 350 kilometers from Sacramento, California. Everyone hoped this would be the conclusion of this tragic story, but unfortunately, it took a darker turn. While he was in prison, Jamie displayed violent behavior. He got into fights, harmed other inmates, and clashed with prison guards. As a result, he was deemed a threat to others and placed in isolation. Jamie spent 23 hours a day confined to his cell, with only 1 hour allotted for outdoor time when no other inmates were present. During that hour, he would walk in circles, which was his only way to cope with the situation. On March 7, 2019, he was assigned a new cellmate, Luis Romero, a 44-year-old man who had been transferred from another prison in California. Luis had a criminal history involving gang affiliations and the murder of a woman when he was a teenager. After serving 27 years in prison, he was close to being released. It remains unclear why he was placed in the same cell as Jamie. Just 2 days later, on the morning of March 9, only 1 inmate was found alive. When prison staff conducted a routine check at 7:30 a.m., they were shocked to find Jamie's cell drenched in blood. Luis's body was in a grotesque position, and Jaime wears a necklace made from the body parts of fellow prisoner. The walls of the cell were marked with red messages. "I am not crazy. I just think differently." And, "You will never be alone. You will never be sad. You can always dance with me." Jamie used a metal blade he had concealed in his cell to commit the violent act. It was revealed that the prison staff did not perform night patrols, which made it easier for Jamie to carry out his plan. Many were shocked not only by the brutality of the act, but also by the fact that a dangerous criminal was placed in a cell with another inmate after previously being in isolation. Justin Sterling, the lawyer representing Luis's family, filed a lawsuit against the California prison, arguing that an inmate known for his violent behavior should not have been housed with a cellmate. In court, Jamie proclaimed his innocence regarding the murder charge. At his lawyer's request, a psychiatric evaluation was conducted, leading to a diagnosis of an unspecified type of schizophrenia, antisocial personality disorder, and borderline personality disorder. Consequently, the court deemed Jamie insane and unable to stand trial, sentencing him to a psychiatric program at Salinas Valley State Prison for treatment before any trial could occur. Jaime Osuna is a cruel man with a harsh upbringing who has shown a desire to take lives from a young age. It's surprising that he was placed with a cellmate. Because of this error, another person lost their life. Although it could be argued that he had 4 victims, only 2 have been officially confirmed. Serial killers often exaggerate their victim count to feel more important or to instill greater fear. At present, there are no clues and no bodies have been discovered, so nothing further can be confirmed. Regardless, no one can deny the horror of this case. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Cassie Farrington. Cassie was born on December 22, 1990, in Virginia. She was the second of 4 children to Chuck and Darlene Brooks. Cassie excelled academically and was an active student, she becoming a member of the National Honor Society and participating in sports. Her initial goal was to pursue a career in medicine. However, when Cassie turned 16, her life drastically changed. She became pregnant, which led her to change her future goals and plans. Several major changes in Cassie's life occurred in the next month. Cassie graduated from high school, gave birth to a baby, married Bradley Farrington, and moved out of her parents' house, all within a brief period, just 1 month. Several years later, she had another child. But over time, her family relationship began to deteriorate. Ultimately, the marriage ended in divorce. Despite this, she persevered, raising her 2 young children in Silver City, a small town with a population of about 10,000. At 22 years old, she worked as a nurse at the local hospital and rented a place from a coworker. As she turned 23, Cassie entered into a new relationship with a man named David Berry. He bonded quickly with her children, and she felt grateful for the way things were going good. Rather than rushing into things, they focused on building a life as a family unit. Cassie confided in her loved ones and co-workers that David had brought happiness to both her and her children, and she was hopeful that this new relationship would bring her the peace and happiness she had been missing after her previous failed marriage. On March 24, 2014, Cassie phoned her parents after finishing her night shift at the Silver City Hospital. They chatted for a few minutes, during which she shared her plan to drive home, pick up her children, and take them to school. Afterward, she intended to return home and rest for a couple of hours before picking her children up from school later that day. School staff called Cassie's parents when they couldn't reach her. Her children had finished their classes, but Cassie hadn't shown up to pick them up. Cassie's mother tried calling her, but there was no answer. Thinking Cassie might have overslept after a night shift, her mother asked Cheryl, her landlord, to check if Cassie was home and if she was okay. Cheryl went to the house and knocked on the door, but no one answered. She then walked around the house and peered through the back door window, noticing water pouring from the bathroom into the kitchen. She knocked harder on the door and shouted Cassie's name, but still got no response. With her own key, Cheryl unlocked the door and entered the house. The sound of running water was louder and more distinct. As she walked across the wet floor towards the bathroom, Cheryl called out Cassie's name, her voice shaking slightly. Then she saw Cassie. Cheryl, a co-worker and friend of Cassie's, discovered her lifeless body in the overflowing bathtub. She was lying face down, wearing a house robe, as water continued to pour out. Despite Cheryl's first aid skills, she realized that Cassie had been dead for a few hours, as rigor mortis had already set in. This made CPR impossible. Cheryl immediately called 911 to report the incident. She then broke the devastating news to Cassie's parents over the phone, informing them of their daughter's passing. As Cheryl waited for the paramedics and police to arrive, she took a moment to inspect the house. She noticed that the second bathroom, located elsewhere in the house, also had an open faucet with running water. However, the hub there had an overflow protection, so the excess water wasn't running onto the floor but going down the drain. Cheryl also observed that the towel rack in the bathroom had been pulled off the wall and was lying on the floor. Upon receiving the news, Chuck and Darlene, Cassie's parents, were devastated. They stopped everything they were doing and traveled from Arizona to Silver City. Within a few hours, they arrived at the house, where their daughter's body had been found. The police were already on the scene, investigating the circumstances surrounding Cassie's death. The officers observed that there was no sign of forced entry into the house, as all the locks were still in place, the windows were closed, and the glass was intact. Additionally, valuables in the house were still intact, so the possibility of robbery was unlikely. The local sheriff questioned Chuck and Darlene, asking if Cassie had any intention of committing suicide and if she had any reason for doing so. However, Chuck and Darlene firmly dismissed this idea and declared that there was no way Cassie would do such a thing. The police chief repeatedly told Cassie's parents that she had likely taken her own life, as if he was trying to convince them of that fact. However, Cassie's parents found the police investigation to be rushed and confusing. Normally, the scene of the case is thoroughly examined and investigated, a process that can take several days. In Cassie's case, the police left the scene just a few hours after her body was found, and they informed Cheryl that she was allowed to enter and use the house. This worries Cassie's parents and they decide to investigate the house themselves. After finding water still in the bathtub, they emptied it and discovered black streaks on the sides of the tub that resembled the marks left by rubber-soled shoes. They also found Cassie's glasses, hairband, and a coat hanger in various places on the floor. Cassie's parents were even more suspicious when the police didn't take the time to search the house for fingerprints. They suspected that the authorities might be trying to close the case quickly without thoroughly investigating it. It wasn't until they contacted the district attorney's office that the police appeared to put in more effort. However, they were still unable to close the case due to the findings of the medical examiner. The autopsy report showed that Cassie had several bruises on her body, particularly around her neck. The examiner concluded that her death was a homicide. However, the investigation had difficulty by the property owner having cleaned up and made some repairs after the incident. This meant that the original crime scene had been disturbed, which could impact the investigation's progress. Cassie's parents were met with silence from the police as the months went by. The police did investigate David Berry, a man Cassie had been seeing before her death, but he was quickly ruled out as a suspect due to a solid alibi. However, as time passed, Cassie's parents grew increasingly frustrated with the local police, feeling they were not doing enough to solve the case. Their concerns led Chuck and Darlene to request a meeting with the chief district attorney to voice their dissatisfaction with the handling of the investigation, specifically with Detective Jose Sanchez. After reviewing the case file, the district attorney agreed with the parents, finding that Jose had made numerous errors. As a result, Jose was removed from the case and a more experienced detective took over. From the start, Cassie's family and friends suspected her ex-husband, Bradley Farrington, was responsible for her death. At the time of Cassie's passing, Cassie and Bradley was entangled in a heated custody battle over their children. And Bradley stood to gain the most from Cassie's death, because he will win custody of the child. Bradley Farrington is a former Silver City police officer who had just retired a few months before Cassie's death, and his good relationship with investigators kept him from being considered a suspect. However, Bradley had a clear motive for the crime and possessed the necessary knowledge to destroy evidence. He was well aware of police procedures and how to cover his tracks. For example, the bath water will wash away any remaining DNA evidence on the body, as well as erase shoe prints on the floor. Given Cassie's familiarity with Bradley, it's likely that she would have opened the door for him. Unfortunately, due to the poor handling of the investigation by the local police. So any evidence linking Bradley and to the crime scene was lost and could not be restored. The only remaining way to hold Bradley accountable is through eyewitness testimony. Cassie had told her parents about their family being abused by Bradley, and that he often acted arrogant because he was a police officer. Cassie lived in constant fear, and Bradley's friends were police officers and she couldn't turn to them for help. She had confided in co-workers about Bradley's threats, including the ominous threat that he would make her disappear without a trace. Tragically, her life was cut short, and she was found dead on March 24, 2014. 19 months later, on October 23, 2015, 28-year-old Bradley Farrington was arrested in connection with Cassie's death. Although Bradley was a suspect, the local police mishandled evidence, leaving none that directly linked him to the crime. As a result, the judge made a decision permitting previously recorded statements from Cassie to be used as testimony during the trial. During the trial, multiple witnesses testified, including Cassie's parents, friends, and co-workers, to whom she had confided about the abuse she endured at the hands of Bradley. Notable among the witnesses was Dr. Michael Hunter, a renowned forensic expert from San Francisco. With over 20 years of experience, Michael presented the jury with autopsy photographs and concluded that Cassie likely died from strangulation. Cassie had injuries to her neck, which supported that conclusion. After a warrant was issued for Bradley's arrest, Jose Sanchez, who initially handled the case, appeared in court. Jose claimed he had never considered Bradley Farrington a suspect because there was no reason to, and also testified that no fingerprints of Bradley were found at Cassie's home. The crime scene was unusually clean, Jose said. He believed the scene was cleaned after the crime was committed, which explains why no fingerprints were found. After 4.5 hours of deliberation, the jury found Bradley Farrington guilty on September 7, 2018. Bradley was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. He later filed an appeal with the New Mexico Supreme Court in 2020. Bradley appealed his conviction, claiming the trial court erred in allowing Cassie's co-workers, friends, and family members to testify in court. However, the state's highest court declared it had enough evidence to convict Bradley and rejected his appeal. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Amanda Plass. Amanda Plass was born on December 11, 1990. She grew up in Chappie, Massachusetts, with her sister Emily and brother Nicholas. Amanda's mother, Michelle Mayes, described her daughter as a hippie and often joked that she was born in the wrong era. In 2011, Amanda worked as a waitress at a Friendly's in Chappie and was dating a 27-year-old carpenter named Seth Green. On August 26, 2011, Seth called 911 to report that he had found Amanda unconscious in the kitchen of her third-floor apartment. During the call, Seth tearfully told the operator that when he arrived, Amanda was lying on the floor, unresponsive, with multiple stab wounds to her body. He did not know how to help and requested the police and an ambulance. When paramedics arrived, they confirmed that Amanda had died from multiple stab wounds, including to her chest, throat, and abdomen. Police cordoned off the home where the crime took place. When they arrived, they found Seth on the porch, crying and unable to calm down. Detectives carefully searched Amanda's apartment. Whoever the perpetrator was, they had escaped but left behind some evidence. The first thing that caught the detectives' attention was the large amount of blood in the kitchen, indicating that the attack had been carried out with a knife. Police also found Nike shoe prints on the floor and handprints on the broken glass window. The motive for this brutal murder remains a mystery. Based on the condition and number of Amanda's injuries, detectives suspect that she may have known her attacker and that the motive was a personal vendetta. Therefore, the first suspect was Amanda's boyfriend, Seth Green. Police took Seth Green in for questioning. It was no surprise that he was the first suspect, given his close relationship with the victim, his blood-stained clothing, and his role in calling 911. The fact that he and Amanda had been dating for less than 2 weeks before her death, and that her family barely knew him, raised suspicions. Seth was 7 years older than Amanda and likely had different views on some issues. But did that lead to an argument that resulted in the brutal crime? This led investigators to suspect that Seth could be the killer, even though he claimed Amanda was dead before he arrived at her apartment. They determined that about 2 hours had passed between Amanda's death and Seth calling 911. That was enough time to cover up evidence and remove the weapon. So the first question detectives had to answer was whether Seth Green had anything to do with Amanda's death. When Seth showed up at the police station, he looked like he had just been through something terrible. He was mourning the death of his girlfriend. Investigators wanted to know if his feelings were genuine or if he was just trying to deflect suspicion from himself. During questioning, Seth said he had been working all day. He had planned to take Amanda to the restaurant where she worked, but couldn't because of his busy schedule. Seth said he didn't know Amanda well because they weren't in a long-term relationship, but he loved her and had no reason to hurt her. Seth worked as a carpenter at a construction site. Investigators began asking him about his tools, implying that he may have used one of them to commit the crime. Seth often used a tool belt at work, which contained a variety of carpentry tools, including a knife. However, he claimed that he always put the tool belt back after work, and that day was no exception. Seth finished the job, changed his clothes and tools, and then went to see Amanda. He understood why he was the most suspected, but he still insisted that he had nothing to do with his girlfriend's death. The police eventually confirmed Seth's alibi. He even passed a lie detector test. When he arrived at the scene, he was wearing construction shoes, which clearly did not match the Nike shoe prints at the scene. In addition, his shoe size was much larger, and the fingerprints on the glasses did not belong to him. With these facts, the police eliminated him as a suspect. Because Amanda tried to resist, she inflicted injuries on the perpetrator. The perpetrator likely suffered scratches on his body in the first weeks after the crime, as a piece of skin belonging to the perpetrator was found under Amanda's fingernails, an important piece of evidence that the police had hoped for. However, when they tested the DNA sample, they found no match in the database. The motive for the crime remains unclear, as many of the items in Amanda's room were still intact. With no signs of forced entry, the police have two theories as to how the criminals entered the house. Amanda may have known them and let them in, or she may have forgotten to lock the door. Investigators interviewed Amanda's co-workers and friends and discovered that the case may have involved a love triangle. Before dating Seth, Amanda had been in a relationship with someone else, and the breakup was not smooth because Amanda initiated it. After a while, she started dating Seth, and Amanda's ex-boyfriend did not seem to be happy with this. Jealousy sometimes leads people to act rashly with serious consequences. Investigators checked the information but found this theory to be unlikely. Amanda's ex-boyfriend provided his DNA and fingerprints, neither of which matched the traces found on her body or at the scene. Furthermore, he had a convincing alibi. Police investigated other leads but failed to find a solution to Amanda's death, leaving the investigation at a standstill. Amanda's family was determined to find justice, so they distributed flyers and held community events in the hope that someone would come forward with vital information. Amanda's mother, Michelle, said her daughter was not perfect, but she did not understand why Amanda died and why no one had reported any useful information to the police. Amanda's family faced another emotional challenge. They discovered that several police officers had taken photos of Amanda's body on their phones and shared them with others, including civilians. According to an internal report, Sergeant Keith Lame, a senior officer who was in charge of monitoring the scene at 73 School Street, where Amanda was stabbed to death on August 26, 2011, was one of the photographers. He sent the photos from his cell phone to another sergeant, who then forwarded them to a patrol officer. One officer shared the photo with civilians, including a coach at a youth soccer game. Records show that Keith used his cell phone to take the photo. Keith then forwarded the photo to Sergeant Jeffrey Godair. Sergeant Jeffrey emailed the photo to Patrolman Chad Levesque. Patrolman Chad shared the photo of Amanda, lying on the kitchen floor, with other soccer coaches. As he did so, Chad said, "This is something I have to deal with at work." The photo was shown to at least 3 coaches at a youth soccer game in Agawam the day after the murder, according to Captain William Jebb, the internal affairs officer who wrote the report. At that time, Patrolman Terry Deck, who was assigned to record all traffic in the apartment for state police, took a photo of Amanda's body and emailed it separately to 6 Chicopee police officers. The investigation found that all 6 officers deleted the emails. None of them were punished for wrongdoing, and their names were not listed on criminal records. The others were punished for incompetence and failure to meet work standards. Terry and Keith, who took the photos, received letters of reprimand. Jeffrey and Chad were docked wages. Nearly 2 years after the murder, there was no sign that the investigation was any closer to finding the culprit. So investigators decided to review all the relevant evidence, hoping to find some missing information. After reviewing the evidence and items in Amanda's bedroom, they discovered a dry erase board with a suspicious message. The message read, "Dennis was here on November 8th. Interestingly, November 8th was only about 2 weeks before Amanda's body was discovered. Investigators began to wonder about the man named Dennis and his role in the case. They began to investigate the relationship between Dennis and Amanda by examining phone records and social media posts. While investigating Amanda's apartment, police discovered that her ex-boyfriend had given them a crucial clue. He said that Amanda's apartment had been broken into several times during her absence. In particular, Amanda told him that she suspected a young Puerto Rican man whose name began with the letter D. However, she did not want to report the incident to the police and wanted to resolve the situation herself by talking to the man. Amanda tried to talk to the man about the break-in, but he would not listen. Amanda then informed him that a neighbor had witnessed him at her apartment. She also begged him to return items that were missing from her home. However, the man became angry and left. The main goal of the investigators was to identify Dennis and determine whether he was involved in Amanda's death. They discovered that a man named Dennis Rosa Roman lived near where Amanda died. A search of Dennis's records revealed that he had been convicted of burglary and breaking and entering. However, no fingerprints were found that matched the ones found at Amanda's home. Police tracked Dennis to Westfield, Massachusetts, and asked him to come to the police station to talk, but he refused. During the brief encounter, Dennis appeared very nervous. Surprisingly, Dennis turned himself into the police station in November 2013 at the age of 22. Police questioned Dennis about his connection to Amanda. Although Dennis admitted to knowing Amanda from Choppy, he said he had not seen her in several years. This made sense since Amanda had been dead for some time. Investigators then asked him if he had ever been to Amanda's apartment. He replied that he had never been there and did not really know her well. He only admitted that he sometimes sold Amanda marijuana and had had a few brief interactions with her. During questioning, Dennis agreed to provide an oral DNA sample and provided his shoe size. The results showed that his shoe size matched the shoes found at the crime scene. Officers also noted that Dennis was wearing a pair of Nike Air Max shoes, the same type as the shoes found at the scene but with a different sole pattern. After providing his DNA, Dennis refused to answer further questions and promised to return to the police station in a few days to continue the conversation. Because there was insufficient evidence to arrest him, officers were forced to release him. This raised concerns that he might be attempting to flee, causing the investigation to stall. Further investigation revealed that Amanda had been in telephone contact with Dennis on July 28, 2011. She made 4 calls and received 5 calls from him. At the same time, Dennis changed his initial statement to police, admitting that he had spoken to Amanda at times. According to Dennis, Amanda told him that people frequently broke into her apartment when she was away, but she did not report it to the police because nothing of value was missing. However, investigators had heard this story many times before and now suspected Dennis was behind the break-ins. They believed he was hiding something, as his statement changed and lacked a clear explanation. When shown a photo of the dry erase board that read, "Dennis was here on November 8, 11, Dennis suddenly remembered writing it, contradicting his previous statement that he had never been in Amanda's apartment. Additionally, DNA testing revealed that his DNA matched DNA found under Amanda's fingernails and that his fingerprints were on a glass pane at the crime scene. This evidence confirmed Dennis's connection to the crime. After realizing that too much evidence was directly against him, Dennis changed his story again. He now claimed to have been present at the crime scene and tried to save Amanda from the attacker, implying that someone else was involved. When asked about the man's identity, Dennis refused, citing fear for his safety and that of his family. Instead, he provided a detailed description of the alleged perpetrator, a tall, 170 to 200-pound white male with light skin, blue eyes, wearing old pants and dirty boots, along with a t-shirt that read, "Why drink and drive when you can smoke and fly?" Detectives did not believe Dennis's testimony, as all the evidence pointed to only one person being present at the crime scene when Amanda was stabbed. They arrested Dennis and charged him with the murder of Amanda Plass. The trial began in 2016, nearly 3 years later. Dennis's lawyers defended their client, arguing that although he was present at the crime scene, he was not responsible for Amanda's death. They accused the police of mishandling the investigation and framing Dennis after they failed to investigate thoroughly. Dennis claimed that on the day of Amanda's death, the drug dealer forced him to come to her apartment because Amanda owed the dealer $500 or $600. He claimed that the dealer started stabbing Amanda with a knife when things got bad. Dennis claimed that he wanted to intervene but was unable to stop the dealer. Dennis also claimed that Amanda had grabbed his hand, which is why his DNA was found under her fingernails. Prosecutors presented a different version of events. According to them, Dennis broke into Amanda's apartment while she was away and left a note with his name on her whiteboard. Amanda discovered this, suspected Dennis was the culprit, and called him to ask him to return her stolen belongings, which led to 9 phone calls between Amanda and Dennis. Prosecutors claimed that on the day of the murder, Dennis returned to Amanda's apartment thinking she was at work. However, Amanda had come home and a fight broke out, leading to Dennis killing her. A 12-person jury found Dennis guilty of causing the death of Amanda Plass in July 2016, after hearing 8 days of testimony and deliberating for 5 hours. The court sentenced Dennis to life in prison without parole. The police department's internal investigation into the scandal surrounding the release of Amanda's photo was delayed for years. However, in 2018, Officer Jeffrey Gaudier was finally fired in connection with the case. Although he appealed the decision, he returned to work in 2020. Due to his misconduct and previous disciplinary actions, a commission demoted him to patrol officer. Amanda's law went into effect in Massachusetts on August 4, 2022. The law makes it a misdemeanor for first responders to illegally take photos of a crime scene, punishable by up to a year in jail or a $2,000 fine. Amanda's family also filed a lawsuit against the city of Choppy, which was eventually settled out of court for $100,000. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Shanynthia Gardner. Shanynthia Gardner was born in the late 80s in Memphis, Tennessee, USA. Not much is known about her childhood except that she was the daughter of Eleanor Snodgrass, who lived in a cozy wooden house in Madison, Alabama. Shanintia's childhood and youth passed as normal as any other girl of her time. Shanynthia was a young girl with curly brown hair, slim and beautiful. She was always surrounded by loyal friends and showed outstanding talent. Shanynthia was full of creative spirit, had a unique talent for songwriting and a passion for music. She expressed herself through singing and attracted the attention of the local people. In addition to singing, Shanynthia was fascinated by the world of fashion and photography. She had the ability to turn everyday moments into works of art in front of the camera. Despite her diverse interests, Shanynthia was a charitable woman who attended church regularly and took good care of her family. Everything in Shanintia's life seemed to be preordained and promised a bright future. Shanynthia was 14 when she met Daryl Clayton through mutual friends. They quickly became friends and their relationship became more serious after graduating from high school, becoming an official couple. They spent a lot of time together and were considered serious and stable young people. However, their crime records had some questionable details. Both had minor crimes such as traffic violations and disorderly conduct on the street. In 2008, Daryl was charged with assaulting a woman, even though the act was unintentional. He faced severe punishment, but all charges were later dropped. Shanynthia and Daryl were not officially married but lived together. In 2008, they had a son named Dee. Shanynthia became a caring mother, taking care of not only her son but also Daryl's 2 children from a previous relationship. Daryl's mother, Sonia Clayton, considered Shanynthia a family member, not just her son's lover. However, their relationship did not last. Although the reason is unknown, they kept in touch after the breakup. For Daryl, Shanynthia was still a good wife and a caring mother. When her son Dee was only 2 years old, Shanynthia was involved in a small incident, possibly a parking ticket or a small argument. This was insignificant compared to what would happen in her future. Marrying Martin Gardner opened a new chapter in Shanyntia's life. This union brought joy and stability to her life. Shanynthia won Martin over with her kindness and love for her children, which was reflected in her gentleness and intelligence. Their love story developed rapidly. In September 2013, they decided to live together and moved into an apartment complex in southeast Shelby County. The wedding marked the beginning of a new phase in their lives. After the celebration, they had their first son, Telone, followed by baby Saya in 2014. Soon after, their 2 daughters Savi and Yazzie were born, bringing happiness to their family. In total, Martin and Shanynthia have 4 children together and 1 child from Shanyntia's previous relationship. As a young mother, her children have always been her #1 priority. She enjoys working part-time at Children's Hospital and is actively involved in a fundraising organization to help children. It is her passion and purpose in life. On a normal Friday, July 1, 2016. Around noon, Shanynthia called her husband, Martin. Her voice was completely calm. She told him that she was going to take the children to the movies. There was no indication that something terrible was going to happen that day. At that moment, they was having a quiet conversation when a sudden and confusing event occurred. Shanynthia suddenly changed her attitude and took a kitchen knife into the living room. She attacked her 6-month-old daughter, Yazzie, leaving her defenseless and in a terrible situation. Yazzie's life was cut short abruptly by the person she loved and was closest to. Dee, the eldest child, was only 7 years old and witnessed this horrific scene. He was too young to understand what was happening, but he knew that he needed to act to save his younger brother and sister. Panicked and desperate, Dee ran out of the house. Shanynthia continued to hold the knife and chase her son. She rushed after Dee, but he screamed loudly, attracting the attention of the neighbors. Several neighbors heard his screams and rushed outside to see what was happening. They witnessed a horrifying scene that they could not forget in their minds. When they realized that Dee was being chased, but Shanynthia stopped. However, the horror was not over yet. Shanynthia returned to the house, where Savi and Talon were waiting for her. Distraught, she went upstairs to the bedroom where the children were lying. Those were the last moments of their innocent lives. Meanwhile, those who witnessed the horrifying scene quickly called the emergency services, asking for help and rescuing Dee and his siblings. None of them could have imagined the tragic consequences that awaited this peaceful street. The sheriff arrived at the scene and witnessed a strange scene inside the house at 7449 Southern Hill Road. They found Shanynthia covered in blood and her 4 children lying motionless, lifeless. The scene left everyone in shock. Shanynthia sat there, holding her cell phone and slowly dialing her husband, Martin. Her voice was soft but cold as she confessed to killing her children. The tragedy that had happened in their lives was a horrific event that would forever be remembered in this quiet neighborhood. By the time the prosecutor's office and the special forces arrived at the scene, everything was over. There was only an eerie silence in the house that had once been home to the Happy Gardner family. Blood and horror were everywhere. Investigators found a bloody knife and witnessed the horrific incident. Chaplains came to help and were shocked by what had happened. Professionals were also ready to assist Dee, who was suffering from a horror that required immediate intervention. Shanynthia was arrested and held without bail. Her trial is scheduled for July 5th. The horrific events unfolding in Shanynthia Gardner's life have left society unable to remain indifferent. Although she has been portrayed as a monster, Shanynthia is still a mother and partner who radiates love, care, and joy. Her co-worker, Michelle Jaiman, has defended Shanynthia on social media and spoken out about the injustice of the charges. Michelle also emphasized the importance of considering postpartum depression in cases like this. Dr. Joel Rissman, a psychiatrist at the University of Tennessee Medical Center, confirmed that infanticide by mothers is rare and often accompanied by mental illness. He also pointed to the lack of mental health funding in the state, which leaves many families without the support they need. Dr. Diane Barnes, an expert in postpartum psychology and health, explained the difference between postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis. She emphasized that the two conditions are completely different, with different symptoms. In Shaninthia's case, Dr. Diane doubts that women with postpartum depression would commit such acts. Instead, she favors the possibility that Shanynthia suffered from psychosis. The investigation into Shanynthia Gardner's case has been fraught with difficulties. Her defense attorney, Craig Morton, has chosen not to comment on the case to the media in its early stages, saying it is too early to discuss it. On July 5, 2016, Shanynthia did not speak at her trial, appearing only via video. Judge Lambert questioned her, but Shanynthia did not respond. After the trial, she was taken to the Institute of Mental Health. Shaninthia's family members were present in court but declined to comment to reporters. Morton's attorney and prosecutor, Jennifer Nichols, plans to file a motion to preserve evidence in the case, including information gathered from social media. In January 2017, Shaninthia was formally charged with 4 counts: aggravated child abuse, aggravated murder with a weapon, aggravated child abuse, and child neglect. The mysterious and chilling investigation continues, leaving the community waiting for justice and answers to many unanswered questions. The hearing was attended by Shaninthia's family members on the day of the tragedy. Sonia, Drill's mother, must have been devastated when she heard the news of the horrific tragedy. She rushed to the scene in a search for her nephew D. Sonia asserted that this action was completely unlike the Shaninthia she knew. Initially, she believed that something supernatural or demonic had caused the tragedy. However, as time passed and the initial shock subsided, Sonia began to consider possible reasons. She theorized that the couple may have been in the process of divorce. Shaninthia, fearful of raising 5 children on her own, may have made the terrifying decision to end it all. However, despite these speculations, Sonia found it hard to believe. To her, the Shaninthia she knew was not the person capable of such a terrible act. Dee's father did not believe Shaninthia was guilty. Although he was not the official guardian, he visited his son regularly after his separation from Shaninthia. However, the last time he saw his son was in November 2014. He noticed that Shaninthia was becoming more extreme in her actions and decisions. All attempts to contact her son failed and he was banned from interfering in her life. Shaninthia's friends and family soon noticed a sudden change in her. She began to show unusual symptoms, from feeling irritable to deep anxiety, paranoia, and panic attacks. Her behavior became erratic and unpredictable, leading many to suspect that she was suffering from postpartum depression. The sudden change in Shaninthia's behavior shocked those around her. She had been a strong, dependable woman who had everything under control. But now, she seemed to have lost her temper, leaving many wondering what had happened. The first signs of trouble appeared in March 2015. Friends and family were puzzled. One day, Shaninthia left work early, picked up her 5 children, and drove off in an unknown direction. Her husband, Martin, thought his wife was just taking the children for a walk and relaxing in the park, as was her usual routine. However, after several hours, Martin was confused and decided to call the police. Shaninthia drove from Memphis to Corinth, 74 miles east, with her 5 children. She did not know anyone there and had no apparent reason for being there. She was later found in the emergency room at St. Francis Hospital, but police did not disclose any details. She had superficial cuts on her neck and wrists, possibly from a suicide attempt, but her children were too young to understand what was happening. After being brought home, Shaninthia began to act strangely. She told her husband Martin that someone had threatened their family, but did not provide any further information. This shocked Martin, who had never had any previous threats. When she was with family and friends, Shaninthia complained about her job and felt bad about it. She then began to say that some of her co-workers wanted to hurt her. Despite the unusual signs, Shaninthia did not exhibit abusive or violent behavior toward her children or others. The wait for trial was long and difficult, with significant delays due to multiple psychiatric evaluations of the defendant. In 2021, the final non-jury trial took place. The defense focused on Shaninthia's mental illness argument. The prosecutor acknowledged her mental condition, but argued that the defendant still had the ability to distinguish right from wrong and was aware of the illegality of her actions. Ultimately, Shelby County Criminal Court Judge James rejected the defense. In December 2021, Shaninthia Gardner was found guilty on all charges against her. In February 2022, Shaninthia, 34, appeared in court to receive her sentence, with her husband Martin present. Judge James sentenced her to life in prison for each count of murder and 15 years for each count of child abuse and neglect. Shanynthia will only be eligible for parole after serving 51 years, including the 5 years she has already served before sentencing. She will be eligible for parole at age 80, about 46 years from now. After the hearing, the prosecutor expressed approval of the sentence, saying it satisfied Martin's desire for justice for his children. Martin also felt relieved to know that Shanynthia would no longer have the opportunity to harm any more children. An evening vigil was held at Sonia family's apartment complex to remember the victims. Sonia stood among a crowd of neighbors, relatives, and police. Attendees held red and white candles, praying for the soul of the deceased. The Baptist minister said this was the first step in healing the community, and everyone could only support the surviving child and his father through this difficult time. Martin did not attend the memorial service because he was too sad. Sonia spoke to the press on his behalf. The leadership of the Children's Hospital where Shanynthia worked also sent condolences. Martin's colleagues set up a social media page to help him arrange the funeral for his 4 children. During the service, Martin spoke about his family and children in an emotional and noble way. His words showed admirable resilience. At the end of his speech, Martin emphasized that he would always remember the happy image of his family, with Shanynthia and the children by his side. This is a precious memory that he will cherish forever. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Tracy Hallett and J.B. Beasley. J.B. Beasley was born on July 31, 1981, in Troy, Alabama, to Cheryl and Hilton Lanier J.B. After her parents divorced in 1984, J.B. moved to Dothan with her mother. Her mother later married Joey Begun, who became J.B.'s loving stepfather, and she and her 4 sisters grew up in a house in Dothan. She was an outgoing girl who enjoyed a variety of activities, including cheerleading, dance lessons, playing the piano, and swimming. J.B. and her sisters also modeled for several companies. During high school, she met Tracy Hallett, with whom she quickly formed a close friendship. Tracy was born on March 3, 1982, to Carolyn and Robert Hallett, a police officer with the Dothan Police Department. Her life took a dramatic turn when her father died when Tracy was 5 years old. Her mother then married Mike Roberts, who raised Tracy with her mother. Unlike her friend J.B., Tracy was shy but always put others before herself. As the eldest in the family, she took her responsibilities very seriously, especially when it came to her 2 younger brothers. Tracy attended Northview High School, excelling in her studies and participating in extracurricular activities as a cheerleader, often with J.B. As the 2 girls began to enter adulthood, they had no idea of the tragic fate that awaited them. On July 31, 1999, J.B. and Tracy set off from Dothan in J.B.'s 1993 Mazda 929 to attend a birthday party in Headland, a town just a few miles north. However, unfamiliar with the roads, the 2 young women soon found themselves in trouble. Just minutes after starting their journey from home, they became lost. At approximately 10:30 p.m., J.B. and Tracy stopped at a BP gas station in Headland to ask for directions. The gas station was located near the intersection of routes 173 and 431. Using the pay phone at the gas station, they called their friends to get a better idea of how to get to the party. However, after driving on, J.B. and Tracy found themselves in Ozark, Alabama, about 24 miles northwest of Headland, instead of their intended destination. Still confused about the directions, the girls stopped at the Big Little store at 11:30 p.m. Although the store was closed, they used the pay phone to make another call. This time, Tracy called her mother to tell them they were lost, in Ozark, and planning to return home. A woman, Marilyn Merritt, and her daughters then stopped at a gas station to buy a soda. Tracy and JB approached them and asked for directions to Dothan. Marilyn explained the route as best she could, and the girls seemed to understand. She found the girls polite and well-mannered and noted that their car was clean. Marilyn recalled that the girls left the parking lot and turned right, as she had instructed. However, at that time, JB and Tracy had not returned home. The next morning, August 1, 1999, around 8 a.m., Tracy's mother contacted the police to report her daughter missing. Police soon discovered their first clue regarding the girl's disappearance. After Tracy was reported missing, police found JB's car on Herring Avenue in Ozark. What was unusual about the discovery was that the car's gas tank, which had been full the day before, was now nearly empty. The car showed signs of having been driven in muddy conditions, but the doors had been locked, although the driver's side window was partially rolled down. There was no evidence of forced entry. Inside, police found JB's driver's license on the dashboard, as well as the girls' wallets, which still contained cash. However, the car keys were missing, and neither Tracy nor JB were found. A fingerprint on the locked trunk lid led police to believe something was seriously wrong. As they surveyed the scene, they suspected the trunk might contain vital clues but were hampered by the lack of a key. However, after 6 hours of investigation, they found an interior latch that allowed them to open the trunk without a key. When police opened the trunk, they made a horrifying discovery: the bodies of 2 girls inside. Both victims were fully clothed, but their pants were soiled from the waist down. Each had been shot once in the head. An autopsy revealed that Tracy had been shot in the temple, while JB had been shot in the right cheek. Tracy's body also showed a 9mm shell casing in her leg, scratches on her arm, and spikes stuck in her jeans. JB's clothes, especially her new shoes, were muddy and dirty. Police discovered that the 2 girls had likely been shot inside the trunk, although initial signs suggested an execution-style killing. After notifying their families of the discovery, an official murder investigation was launched. Police found the girls' wallets, jewelry, money, and credit cards still in the car, indicating that this was not a robbery. Autopsies revealed no alcohol or drugs in the victims' systems. Additionally, the autopsies confirmed that neither girl had been sexually assaulted before her death, ruling out a sexual motive. 2 months after Tracy and JB's murders, the State Crime Lab released a report revealing the presence of unidentified semen on JB's clothing and skin. Despite this new evidence, the fingerprints found on the trunk lid remained a mystery, as there was no match in the database. With no clear leads, the investigation stalled. As news of the girls' deaths spread rapidly, police still had few leads to identify a suspect. A reward was also offered to try to gather information related to the murders, but no new leads were discovered. However, police soon received an unexpected breakthrough in the case. A month after the discovery of JB and Tracy's bodies, Johnny William Barentine, 28, a longtime resident of Ozark, came forward to the local police department on September 1st. Johnny claimed to have witnessed the girls' murders. He testified that on the night of the murders, he had gone out to buy milk for his 2-year-old son around the time Tracy called from the Big Little Store pay phone. At 1 a.m., Johnny returned home visibly upset and initially told his wife that he had been hit by a black truck near Herring Road. However, during a 4-hour interview with Ozark police, Johnny gave 6 different accounts of what he knew. He initially told Ozark Police Chief Tony R. Spivey that he saw a black truck speeding away from the area where the girls' bodies were discovered. Unfortunately, his story continued to change and contradict throughout the interviews. Johnny initially claimed that he picked up a tattooed stranger and drove to the Big Little Store. He later said that the stranger got into a car with 2 girls, whom he recognized as the 2 girls who were later found dead. Johnny said that the group drove to Herring Avenue, where the stranger forced the girls out of the car, leading to a struggle as the girls tried to escape. According to Johnny's statement, after witnessing a confrontation, he saw something in the stranger's hand just before hearing 2 gunshots. Johnny then drove the stranger away from the scene before returning home. However, in a conflicting version of events, Johnny admitted to police that he actually knew the stranger he picked up, identifying him as a neighbor who lived nearby. Notably, Johnny's home was less than a mile from where police discovered the victims' bodies. Johnny's story was not convincing to police, and he became the prime suspect in the murders of JB and Tracy. As a result, Ozark police quickly arrested him and charged him with 2 counts of attempted murder. However, several issues with his testimony raised suspicions. Notably, Johnny did not mention any sexual activity that would explain the presence of semen on JB's clothes and body. Additionally, the neighbor he accused had a solid alibi for the time. Johnny initially confessed to making up the entire story to collect the reward money. Despite his admission, the police believed they had the right suspect. At a preliminary hearing on September 21, Alabama Bureau of Investigation Special Agent Charles Huggins testified that Johnny accurately described the victim's clothing and other relevant details, indicating that he was indeed present at the crime scene. Then, at a bail hearing on October 18, Johnny gave another testimony. He proclaimed his innocence, saying that he never picked up a man with a tattoo or witnessed anything on the night of the murder. According to Johnny, he went to the store around 11 p.m. to buy milk for his son and then made up the story to get a reward. The judge denied him bail and he was sent back to the Dale County Jail in Ozark. Throughout this time, Johnny's family members remained supportive of him. They gave interviews to the media, expressing their belief in his innocence and stating that he was incapable of harming anyone. Johnny's attorney, Bill Kimmons, argued that his client had no involvement in the murders of Tracy and JB, emphasizing that the 4-hour interrogation had affected Johnny, who was trapped in his own false confession. Johnny's defense also pointed out that he had only completed 7th grade and part of 8th grade. He said his client was in special education, suggesting he was incapable of planning the heinous crime. After further investigation, it was discovered that Johnny's DNA did not match the semen found on the victim's body and clothing. As a result, he was released from prison on December 17, 1999. In January 2000, a Dale County grand jury chose not to indict Johnny, officially clearing him of any suspects in the murders of Tracy and JB. This development led to a setback in the investigation, with criticism directed at the police methods used and doubts raised about the Ozark Police's ability to handle the case. However, police continued to focus on other potential suspects. During the investigation, a man from Michigan was identified as the prime suspect. He had attended a party the night of the murders near the area and JB's car was later found. The man had left town shortly after the murders, raising suspicion. Police interviewed him 3 times in Michigan but were unable to provide a clear explanation for the 3 to 4 hour gap in his alibi for the night of the murder. However, these statements were never made public by police. The case against him was eventually dropped after DNA evidence proved his innocence. Another key lead police are investigating is the driver of a small white pickup truck that was spotted at the Big Little store. Security footage captured the truck at the gas station when JB and Tracy stopped to call Tracy's mother from a payphone. The video quality was poor and did not show the driver or anyone getting in or out of the truck. It was impossible to follow a digital trail, as there was no record of gas being purchased at the gas station at the time. After releasing photos of the truck to the media, police asked the public for information, but as leads went cold, the driver and truck were never found. The last potential lead was a Mississippi man who had been extradited to Ozark from Jones County on an unrelated charge of possession of drug paraphernalia. The man had stayed with relatives in Ozark for a short time before leaving town 2 days after the murder. prompting police to question him. However, the questioning yielded no significant information and, without evidence, they were forced to release him. A woman contacted police in March 2000, reporting that she had heard screaming and 2 gunshots on the night of July 31, 1999, near Highway 123 South, just inside the city limits. When asked about her delayed report, she explained that she feared being implicated. Police searched the area thoroughly based on her description and found a 9mm bullet, the same caliber used in the murders of Tracy and JB. However, the make of the bullet did not match the brand of the shell casing found on Tracy's body. Furthermore, the bullet had no markings that could be used to forensically compare it to other evidence in the case. Unfortunately, this lead ended up being another dead end for the police. Several leads in the JB and Tracy case eventually ran into dead ends, but police were determined to find a DNA match. As JB and Tracy's grieving families tried to move on with their lives, the case went cold. Years later, however, a dramatic development reignited the investigation. A major breakthrough came in 2015 when Rena, an auxiliary Ozark police officer, came forward and publicly accused an Ozark police officer of killing JB and Tracy and others of covering up the incident. Rena made several serious allegations related to a 1999 incident in Ozark. According to her, a police officer stopped a man named JB on the night of July 31, 1999, looking for cassette tapes containing recordings of conversations. These tapes allegedly implicated Ozark police officers in a cocaine distribution and profiteering scheme. Rena asserted that the search for the tapes ultimately led to the murders of the 2 innocent girls. Rena further alleged that several law enforcement officers knew the identity of the killer but chose to cover it up by destroying evidence. They also allegedly threatened her to keep her from speaking out. She specifically named 3 police officers, Gary Butch Whittington, Rex Tipton, and Eddie Henderson, as harassing and threatening her. Rena further accused then-police Chief Tony Spivey, who led the initial investigation, of being involved in the cover-up. However, she did not reveal the identity of the specific police officer she believed was responsible for the murders. Noted American journalist and newspaper editor John B. Carroll wrote an article discussing the case. John B. believes that the officer involved thought that Tracy and JB would use the tapes as evidence in a trial scheduled for August 2, 1999, just 48 hours after they were killed. However, John B. also claims that Rena was severely beaten with a baseball bat after speaking out, which prevented her from naming the real killer. The officers Rena accused all denied any involvement in the murders of JB and Tracy. Without any physical evidence, none of them were ever officially named as suspects in the case. Regardless, the allegations exploded on numerous true crime websites and social media, leading to a defamation lawsuit. On January 29, 2016, Keith Coffin, Rex Tipton, Tony Spivey, Eddie Henderson, and Gary Butch Whittington, all Ozark, Alabama police officers, filed a defamation of character lawsuit against Rena Crum, John B. Carroll, and Dean Matthews. That case was dismissed in 2018. In May 2016, Rena Crum was convicted of molesting JB's sister and was given a suspended sentence and a $250 fine. Over the years, police investigated multiple theories, interviewed hundreds of people, and took DNA samples from several suspects, but to no avail. It took 20 years and the advancement of new DNA technology before police were able to make an arrest. In March 2019, police sent DNA found on JB's body and clothing to Virginia-based Parabon Nano Laboratories, which specializes in DNA. Using a public genealogical database to analyze the suspect's DNA and match it to genetic information led police to a breakthrough in the case. The new evidence linked DNA found at the crime scene to a suspect named Coley McCraney, a man in his 40s. At the time, Coley was not a suspect in the 1999 murders of J.B. Beasley and Tracy Hallett, but the discovery changed everything. Coley, an Alabama native, had led a relatively normal life before his DNA linked him to the crimes. Born in Alabama, Coley attended and graduated from Carroll High School in Ozark in 1992, where he was an accomplished athlete and served as president of the school's library club. After completing high school, he enlisted in the United States Air Force and served from 1993 to 1997. Coley's personal life involved several marriages. He married his first wife in 1992 but separated 2 years later and eventually divorced. During this time, his ex-wife accused him of assault and filed a complaint with the Air Force. After the divorce, Coley remarried in 2001 and started a family with his second wife. With the exception of a child support issue in 1998, Coley has no prior criminal record or criminal history. Coley spent 20 years as a truck driver for various companies in Alabama. In addition to his trucking career, he recently co-founded a church and served as a bishop. At the time of the murders, Coley was 26 years old and lived on Lisenby Drive in Ozark, about a mile from where J.B. and Tracy's bodies were discovered in 1999. 20 years after the murders, Coley was arrested on March 19, 2019, following a traffic stop in Daleville, Alabama. During an interview with police, Coley claimed that he did not know J.B. and Tracy. Police did not provide any information about his possible motive. Coley's arrest took the Ozark community by surprise, especially Police Chief Marlon Walker, who attended school with him. Rena Crum, 53, who previously accused the Ozark Police Department of covering up the killings, withdrew her charges at a hearing in August 2022. Coley McCraney, 49, is facing 5 counts of attempted murder for the shooting deaths of J.B. Beasley and Tracy Hallett and is being held without bail in the Dale County Jail ahead of his trial, which is scheduled for April 17, 2023. At trial, Coley admitted that he knew J.B. He had a conversation with J.B. several weeks before the killings in which she introduced herself as Jennifer at the Wiregrass Commons Mall. He testified that on the day of the killings, he and J.B. had consensual sex in his truck. He said he never knew that Jennifer was J.B. Beasley. On April 26, 2023, a jury found Coley McCraney guilty on all charges and sentenced him to life in prison without parole. In July 2023, a Dale County District Court judge denied Coley's request for a new trial. Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Brianna Nugent. Brianna grew up in Hayden, Alabama, USA. Her friendly personality helped her make many friends. She doesn't care about boys at school. Instead, she devotes herself to her studies with the goal of becoming a nurse. After graduating high school, she enrolled in the nursing program at Wallace Community College. There, she met Stephen Nix, who was known to enjoy drinking and gambling. He was not concerned about having a stable job and often acted irresponsibly. Stephen worked as a cleaner at the medical center where Brianna was interning, and he seemed uninterested in improving his life. Despite their differences, they began dating, and at one point, Brianna moved into his house, where he lived with his parents. However, after a while, Stephen admitted to Brianna that he was having an affair with a coworker. This revelation shocked Brianna, leading her to end the relationship. She then focused on her studies and successfully earned her nursing degree. During the following year, Stephen repeatedly tried to reach out to her, pleading for another chance and promising he would never cheat again. Eventually, Brianna relented and agreed to give him another opportunity. They later got married and both started working to save money for their first home. The problem started when Stephen lost his job as a cleaner. He attempted to find another job but had difficulty maintaining any position for long. After several attempts, he eventually stopped looking for work altogether. His daily routine began to mirror that of a teenager. He spent his nights playing computer games and slept until the evening. Although Brianna had a good income, but Steven, who was not contributing financially, took control of the family budget. Brianna had to ask him for every dollar she needed for basic necessities, often pleading with him for even essential items and food. However, Steven didn't control his spending, so he ended up in debt of about $50,000. To address this issue, he persuaded Brianna to declare bankruptcy. At that point, he had such control over her that she felt she couldn't refuse. In 2019, they went through with this plan, and the debts were eliminated, but it took a big toll on Brianna, leaving her morally exhausted. The stress caused by Steven led her to depression, requiring expensive medications. After a few months, she was offered a life insurance policy at work, which depended on her income as a nurse. When she brought it up to Steven, he agreed it was a good idea. By February 2020, Steven was still unemployed and was heavily reliant on Brianna. She started to suspect that he might betray her again and feared he was using illegal drugs. To protect herself, Brianna hid her medications from him, but he continued to control her finances and her life. She felt trapped in a toxic relationship and was unsure how to escape, fearing her parents would judge her for wasting time on someone unworthy. Ultimately, she only confided in a few close friends and her sister, sharing her intention to file for divorce. On March 2, 2020, around noon, Steven called 911, claiming he found his wife, Brianna, unresponsive in the bathroom. The dispatchers instructed him to perform CPR, but throughout the call, he made no attempt to help his wife. Instead, he focused on telling his version of incident while ignoring their instructions. 5 minutes later, when paramedics arrived, a county sheriff's deputy and some of Steven's family members were already present. It was unusual that an officer, who was supposed to be half an hour away from the incident, arrived even before the paramedics. The Steven family lived far away, yet they arrived at his house very quickly. Soon after, Brianna's relatives also arrived. Steven called his mother and sister at 12:20 p.m. after the ambulance had arrived. He informed them that Brianna had ended her life and said he had witnessed similar things in the past. His family was shocked and rushed to the house. The medics tried to revive Brianna, but it was too late. By the time the ambulance arrived, she was already cold, indicating that she had been dead for several hours. A syringe with an 18mm needle was found nearby, leading to speculation that Brianna may have died from an overdose of illegal drugs. Steven explained that his wife's body had already cooled down when he found her. He said he was preparing to go outside when he heard a loud noise from the bathroom, which sounded like something had fallen. He dismissed it, thinking it was just mobile phone. After going shopping and returning about an hour later, he went upstairs and found his wife lifeless. Brianna's family rejected the idea that her death was due to an overdose. They frequently communicated with her and did not see any signs of substance abuse. As a nurse, Brianna was subject to random screenings for alcohol and illegal drugs at work, and her results were consistently negative. Her colleagues also expressed disbelief, stating they could not imagine her using anything harmful. When Brianna's relatives arrived, they observed that Steven appeared calm and not overly concerned about the situation. He was even cleaning the bathroom. However, his demeanor changed dramatically, and he became nervous once police officers arrived. While the police were focused on investigating the crime scene, Steven took a bag of collected garbage from the bathroom and threw it into his pickup truck instead of the trash bin. When the police requested access to Brianna's mobile phone, Steven refused. However, her sister was able to unlock the phone and discovered that Steven's last call to Brianna was made at 7:53, a time when he usually would still be asleep after a night of playing video games. When questioned by the police, Steven claimed he had called her number just to tease her, but he did not explain the nature of the joke. Additionally, at 12:02, after calling 911, Stephen inexplicably sent a text message to Brianna. He could not explain why he would text someone who had already passed away. He also refused to allow the police to inspect his car. After learning that he had thrown the garbage bag away, the investigator had to return to the station to obtain a warrant. This inadvertently allowed Stephen time to get rid of the evidence. He quickly got rid of the garbage and erased any traces of his actions. The crime scene was thoroughly cleaned by the next day, when Brianna's relatives arrived to gather items for the burial. Brianna's sister was shocked to discover that Brianna didn't even own nice underwear. This seemed odd. It also shows that her husband does not allow her to spend any money on herself. The following day, Stephen called Brianna's sister, Brittany, and invited her to his home for a discussion. When she arrived, his relatives were already there. He showed her 2 empty bottles of opioid painkillers and a bag of syringes. Stephen claimed he found these items in a drawer of Brianna's belongings, suggesting she died from a drug overdose due to a long-standing addiction. However, this medication can only be prescribed by prescription, and it certainly does not belong to Brianna. Brittany was sure that Stephen was lying. After Brianna's death, Brittany and her mother went through Brianna's things and didn't find anything missing. They would have been aware if anything was gone. Then, Stephen showed Brittany another drawer that had Brianna's underwear in it. He claimed to have found more evidence there that Brittany and her mother had overlooked. At that point, Brittany started to think that Stephen might have been involved in Brianna's death, and she no longer wanted to listen to him. Brittany went to the funeral home to style her deceased younger sister's hair and makeup, Brianna, despite strong objections from Stephen's family. Upon arriving, she quickly realized why they were so concerned. She discovered her sister's body covered in numerous fresh bruises and over 80 injection marks, some new and others starting to heal. At the time of her death, Brianna was a certified nurse and knew how to administer injections properly. If she had a secret substance addiction, her level of bruising is also not normal. Additionally, some injection sites were located in where Brianna couldn't have reached herself without assistance. They also found signs of trauma on her palms, resembling defensive wounds. The condition of the needle marks indicated they were inflicted about 8 to 12 hours before her death. The nature of some injuries suggested that someone had restrained Brianna while administering the injections. This case cannot be considered end your own life, and it feels like the police are against Brianna. Brittany was able to take several photos of the Brianna body before being removed from the funeral home. She collected crucial evidence indicating that Brianna had died a tragic death. Brittany suspected that Brianna's husband, Stephen, was responsible. At Brianna's funeral, Stephen did not speak to anyone nor offer any greetings. He attempted to fake tears but ultimately had none, and many attendees noticed he appeared very unnatural. Several witnesses said Stephen bragged about connections that could help him evade justice, he even speaking with a mourner who turned out to be a police officer from another city, but he quickly ended the conversation when he realized this. At that time, no one was aware that the deputy sheriff who arrived at the scene before everyone else was related to Stephen. Brianna's sister discovered that this deputy was not included in the investigation records, despite having full access to the crime scene. In October 2020, an investigator contacted Brianna's family to inform them that she had been the victim of a crime. The investigator suggested that she may have been killed because she witnessed another crime and was killed as an unintended witness. However, this theory was never confirmed, and the investigation was eventually closed. Stephen continued to live in the home he shared with his late wife, Brianna. Just a few days after Brianna's death, Stephen's longtime mistress moved in with him. They even renamed Brianna's favorite dogs. He received $160,000 in life insurance money from Brianna's death. Stephen rarely left the house and continued to live a childish lifestyle, spending the insurance money on video games, pouring concrete in front of the house, buying expensive car parts, and acquiring weapons and gifts for his lover. Stephen showered lover with lavish gifts, including jewelry and ostrich leather boots. However, he was unable to afford a tombstone for Brianna's until 6 months later, and this only happened after her relatives pressured him to do so. Brianna's family was appalled by his actions from the start. They sought justice for her by filing complaints with the police and other authorities, but their efforts were in vain. The case was closed, labeled as an accident, and no investigation was conducted to gather evidence or identify suspects. Brianna's family continued to appeal to higher authorities, requesting that the police reopen the investigation, but they were told it was under the jurisdiction of a different police station. The Brianna's family is concerned that Stephen's connections are obstructing the investigation. Despite this, Brianna's sister remained persistent, and the case was reopened. Unfortunately, it was soon discovered that all the evidence had been lost, and no thorough examinations had been conducted during prior investigations. Stephen is still withholding crucial case information from Brianna's sister and mother. Although he claims that access to the medical report from the pathologist is restricted until an official conclusion is reached, this is misleading. He is aware of the report's contents, raising questions about his motives. Eventually, the Brianna's family hired a private detective who was able to uncover various materials. One significant find was video footage from a search of Stephen's car and home, which showed him smiling brightly while leaning over Brianna's lifeless body. Following the public revelation of this footage, Stephen became fearful and installed security cameras around the house. Meanwhile, Brianna's sister Brittany continues to search for evidence that proves Stephen was involved in her younger sister's death. Brittany sent a photo of a package of fentanyl to Brianna's co-workers, who firmly stated that the medicine package did not come from the hospital, as they had never seen such drugs before. It was later revealed that a different drug from another manufacturer was used at their workplace, which had different packaging. This contradicted Stephen's earlier claim that Brianna had become addicted to drugs at work. Moreover, an official request from a medical institution confirmed that Brianna could not have stolen the drugs, as their records were strictly monitored. The large needles found in Brianna's home were not typically used for such drugs, and Brianna, a nurse, was aware of this. Additionally, Brianna's family received a toxicology report about 4 months after her death. The report revealed that her body contained high levels of various psychotropic substances, including of antidepressants and fentanyl, almost double the lethal dose. The Brianna's family believes that Brianna, given her experience with medications, would not have made such a mistake or acted carelessly. When Brittany spoke to the medical examiner responsible for the autopsy and the cause of death determination, he mentioned that the conclusions in the autopsy report heavily relied on the circumstances surrounding the death. They reviewed reports from investigative agencies like the sheriff's office and the coroner's office. Brianna's death certificate states that the immediate cause of death was an overdose, and it categorizes her death as an accident. However, achieving justice remains difficult. The Brianna's family initiated a petition to raise public awareness, which could have helped with legal and social expenses. Unfortunately, they only raised $5,000 instead of the needed $20,000, leaving the majority of the financial burden on Brianna's family. The case is over. Justice has not been served. We will follow the new details of the case in the future. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Teresa Keel. Teresa Keel, a teacher from New York, was born and lived for a time in the Queens area. She later moved to Long Beach, Florida, where she married a well-known dentist. Unfortunately, her husband passed away in 2004. Teresa had 2 children from this marriage, Francesca and Vincent. After becoming a widow, she devoted her entire life to taking care of her children. Besides, she created a unique tutoring program for local homeless children who did not have access to education. Initially, Teresa worked as a teacher, and eventually she became the principal of a high school in the district. Her son, Vincent, was a talented athlete and tennis player, while her daughter Francesca excelled in school. Then, Vincent became an app developer, with his mother's support. Francesca worked as a waitress while attending classes at the community college nearby. Teresa and her 2 children lived together in Long Beach. On December 4, 2016, local resident Franklin Kuzma was returning home from training at 10:30 p.m. when he noticed a figure chasing a woman down the street. Although his view was limited, but he saw that the person had chased the woman into the building and hit her, after which she fell down. Franklin immediately ran to help and found the woman with a serious head injury. He scared the attacker away and shouted to neighbors to call the rescue service, then chased after the attacker. He followed the attacker into a dark alley, but lost sight of him and could not continue the pursuit. Franklin returned to the crime scene, where the police had already arrived. The victim was 56 years old Teresa Keel, who was alive but in serious condition. As she was being loaded into the ambulance, her son Vincent arrived, and a neighbor informed him about the incident. Vincent was in shock, having dined with his mother just a couple of hours earlier. The police began examining the crime scene, which was at the entrance of an apartment building. A hole in the wall indicated that the criminal's first blow missed its target. Teresa had resisted the attack. The possibility of robbery was ruled out because her wallet and phone were found next to her. Given the brutality of the attack, the police believed the motive was personal. Franklin, a neighbor who witnessed the attack and chased the suspect, provided a detailed account of the incident. He described the attacker as tall, strong, and athletic. The attacker's face was partially concealed by a hat and a bandage. Despite using search dogs, no trace of the suspect was found, suggesting he fled by car. Near Teresa's house, a blood-stained dumbbell was discovered and became the main weapon in the case. It was sent to a lab for analysis. Records supported the sequence of events, and Franklin's neighbor obtained an image of the suspect, but it was of poor quality, obscuring the face. Franklin was seen pursuing someone carrying a sports bag. It is possible that inside were clothes that the suspect had changed into before disappearing. However, Teresa's daughter, Francesca, could not be reached. Her brother Michael and Vincent reported that Francesca left home about 10 months ago, after starting a relationship with Ralph Kepler. The relationship caused family tension since Francesca was 18 and Ralph, at 26, had a dubious reputation. He was a former athlete and worked as a correctional officer. Francisco often argued with her mother, who urged her to end the relationship and return home. The family believed Francesca might be involved in the attack on her mother, suspecting Ralph's involvement. Right after the attack, Teresa fell into a coma. Doctors reported severe injuries from a blunt object. She almost lost her right eye, several teeth were knocked out, her skull was crushed, and she had a serious brain injury. She was connected to life support. Doctors suspected a dumbbell caused the injuries. The police hoped Teresa would wake from the coma to give a statement. Meanwhile, detectives conducted a more thorough investigation into Francesca and Ralph. The investigation revealed conflicts between Ralph and the Keel family, which could be a motive. The police visited Linwood, where he and Francesca lived. They were separated and questioned separately. She was shocked to hear of the attack on her mother. Detectives were skeptical, but she insisted they had an alibi. She and Ralph were at home all night wrapping gifts and watching football, they providing a selfie posted online 11 minutes after the attack as proof. Ralph, in another room, supported her story, saying he only left the house once that day, around 11 a.m., to buy a lottery ticket and then returned home. Detectives remain wary about Ralph and Francesca's statements, even though their statements have many similarities. They were questioned extensively about the tension between them and Teresa. They do not deny it, but they explaining that Teresa was suspected of embezzling money from investors who funded their joint project to develop a new social network. According to they, all the investors could be upset with Teresa. Moreover, a lawsuit had recently been filed against her. During the investigation, the detectives looked into the investors and discovered that one of them was Ralph, who had invested $130,000 in the project. Ralph considered himself an ambitious entrepreneur and wanted to invest his savings wisely. He knew Vincent was an app developer and wanted Vincent to create a new dating app, similar to a social network, that would become popular and profitable. However, this job takes a lot of time and he doesn't like it. Ralph accused Teresa and Vincent of defrauding investors out of $350,000 intended for app development. In a lawsuit filed in May 2016, Ralph claimed that his money was misused for cosmetic surgeries, luxury cars, beauty salon visits, and clothing. Both Teresa and Vincent denied these allegations. Vincent continues to develop this application, he stating from the beginning that app development would take a significant amount of time and effort. Other investors had solid alibis and did not blame Teresa, as she had refunded their money. This left Ralph and Francesca as the main suspects. To validate their suspicions, detectives needed concrete evidence. Ralph and Francesca's alibi was weak, and no one could corroborate it. Detectives noticed discrepancies and decided to conduct a thorough investigation into the couple's communication. They collected recordings of messenger conversations from Vincent, Francesca, Ralph, and Teresa, who was still in a coma. The investigators uncovered troubling evidence. In nearly every conversation, Teresa warned that Ralph posed a threat to the family. Ralph, in turn, claimed that Teresa had severely harmed his well-being and made threats suggesting she deserved to die. He also mentioned the possibility of an accident, and after the attack, he and Francesca expressed satisfaction that Teresa had sustained serious injuries, particularly the loss of an eye. However, this was not enough to bring them to court. People who knew Teresa mentioned that she was frightened of Ralph and often voiced this to friends. She feels he is a threat to Vincent and Francesca. Teresa's family has filed a lawsuit in court, accusing Ralph of financially, emotionally, and sexually controlling Francesca. They alleged that he monitored Francesca's phone calls and emails, pressured her into getting breast implants, and even forced her to claim that Teresa's was a prostitute. Francesca denied these allegations, asserting that everything was consensual, which led the judge to dismiss the case. During the trial in December 2017, Ralph alleged that Teresa and Vincent had received a substantial amount of money from him to develop a dating app but used it for personal expenses instead. However, these allegations were unsubstantiated because Vincent demonstrated that he was still actively working on the project. The investigators investigated Ralph and Francesca's phone records and discovered a phone number linked to Spytech, a company that sold tracking devices. It turned out that Francesca had purchased a GPS tracking device from them. 2 weeks before the attack, Francesca's emails contained alerts from the device she used to track Teresa's location. Both she and Ralph had the ability to change the device's batteries and knew when it needed to be done. On the day of the murder, December 4th, Francesca ordered a taxi, which allowed investigators to trace the vehicle that Ralph used. Detectives spoke with the taxi driver. The driver recalled that he had given a ride to a man who matched Ralph's description. The driver described him as a tall and strong individual. He was acting very strangely. He seemed nervous, climbed into the back seat, and bent down as if trying to hide from someone, and got out at the station. Although the price of the trip is $5, but he paid nearly $20 and quickly left. CCTV footage from the station was reviewed, and the man's appearance matched Ralph's description in several ways, particularly regarding his body type and clothing. This evidence was sufficient to warrant Ralph's arrest. On January 24, 2018, Ralph was charged with attempted murder using a dumbbell. DNA evidence from 2 individuals was found at the scene. The police tried to collect a DNA sample from Ralph for comparison, but he insisted on having a lawyer and refused to provide a sample. He was taken into custody, and bail was set at $50,000. During this time, they obtained a DNA sample that was taken from him without his knowledge. After paying the bail, Ralph was released from prison but was placed under house arrest while awaiting trial. Investigators continue to look into Francesca's involvement in the crime, suspecting that she might be an accomplice. Friends of Francesca reported that Ralph had manipulated her into. He tells her that her family is trying to usurp the inheritance left by her father. This led she to distrust her family. The DNA analysis results from the dumbbell found in November 2018 are in. It contained Teresa's blood, as well as DNA that matched Ralph's DNA. The police obtained over 20 warrants to search electronic devices and communication records for more information. It became increasingly clear that Francesca was involved in planning the crime, especially after examining her personal computer and phone. In the months leading up to the attack, she had researched online about the effectiveness of DNA testing on vulnerable areas of the head. This strongly suggested that she was looking for the most effective way to kill her own mother, Teresa. On November 10, 2018, Teresa's family made the difficult decision to disconnect her from life support after she had been in a coma for 2 years without any improvement in her condition. Doctors had indicated that there was no chance of her returning to a normal life. This decision resulted in more serious charges for Ralph and Francesca, who were arrested again, now facing murder charges. They maintained their innocence, but the evidence against them was overwhelming. Eventually, they detailed their involvement in the crime. On December 4th, Francesca found Teresa at a diner, where she was having dinner with Vincent. Meanwhile, Ralph was waiting for she to come home. After the attack, Francesca called a taxi for Ralph, who fled the scene. To create a false alibi, Francesca used of their mobile phones from home in Linwood to post a selfie on social media, which she had taken earlier and stored in a cloud for this purpose. There was overwhelming evidence proving Francesca and Ralph's guilt, so the trial was reopened in late 2019. The prosecution offered a plea deal to the couple to lessen their sentences, which they both accepted. Ralph Kepler pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and aggravated murder, receiving a life sentence with the possibility of parole after 22 years. Francesca Keel pleaded guilty to unintentional murder and was sentenced to 13 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 9 years. Hello again, true crime fans, we've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Molly Tibbetts. Molly Tibbetts was a vibrant young woman born in San Francisco on May 8, 1998, to Rob and Laura Tibbetts. She had 2 brothers, Jake and Scott. Molly was fortunate to grow up with loving parents and began to excel in school shortly after starting 2nd grade. Life presented Molly with an unexpected challenge. Things were going well for her and her parents until they decided to divorce. In 2007, Molly moved to Brooklyn, Iowa, with her mother and brother. Brooklyn was her mother's hometown, and Molly now had the opportunity to experience her teenage years in this quiet town. The move was difficult for Scott, Jake, and Molly, but their caring parents provided essential support. Their father, Rob, maintained a close relationship with his children. Although he couldn't be there all the time, he was determined to do everything he could to help them. Brooklyn is a small town with a population of only 1,400. Life there is calm, a stark contrast to the hustle and bustle of San Francisco. Molly and her 2 brothers have adapted perfectly to their new home. Molly plans to continue her studies at Brooklyn College. She is a sociable person who makes many friends. Molly is smart, energetic, positive, and cheerful. In 2015, Molly met a senior named Dalton Jack at her Brooklyn school, and she instantly liked him. This encounter took place on a chilly October evening while Dalton and his friend were sitting in a pickup truck after playing football. A few younger students approached them, including Molly. Dalton was immediately taken with her. She made him laugh and he found her beautiful. They exchanged phone numbers and soon began having lunch together and going to the movies. From that point on, they fell in love and Dalton considering her his everything. Molly and Dalton's love for each other deepened over time. 2 years later, when Molly moved from Brooklyn to study psychology at the University of Iowa, she maintained her relationship with Dalton. While she was in Iowa, Dalton stayed in Brooklyn to pursue a career in construction, but this did not affect his feelings for her. They managed to see each other almost every weekend and even on some weekdays. Her freshman year at university passed quickly. By the end of May 2018, she returned to Brooklyn for the summer. During her break at home, Molly kept herself busy throughout the day. She worked at a local children's day camp at Green Regional Medical Center, and in the evenings, she participated in activities to prepare for her sophomore year. Molly also made time to go jogging almost every evening. She split her time between her mother's house and her boyfriend Dalton's house on the western edge of Brooklyn. Unlike university students, Dalton didn't have a summer vacation and worked most weekdays. His construction work is sometimes local and sometimes he works across the state. On July 18, 2018, Molly visited Dalton's house. Dalton lived there with his brother and their dogs. But both of them worked away from home. Dalton was working on a project on Highway 61 near Oak. Molly agreed to take care of the dogs and stay at Dalton's house to work and study. It was a hot day, so Molly stayed inside with her dogs and her laptop, hoping for a cooler temperature. The day seemed normal. She spent her free time chatting with her boyfriend on the phone, looking for something to eat, or engaging in conversations on Twitter. As the sun set, the weather cooled down. This is a good time for Molly to go for a run. Around 7:30 p.m., she left her laptop open, sent Dalton a selfie, put on her workout clothes, and headed to the cornfield for her workout. However, Molly never returned. She was missing that night. Dalton, who had not heard from her that night, assumed she was just busy and had gone to bed. But the next morning, when Molly's messages remained unanswered, he began to worry. He contacted friends to ask if they had heard from Molly, but they had no idea where she was. All of her social media accounts are inactive. The panic really began when her boss called Dalton to find out why she had missed work. Molly was always on time for her job and had never missed a day before, so her absence was unusual. Dalton was worried and wondered what could have happened to her. Her silence made Dalton, her family and friends feel uneasy. By the end of the day, the police and the local community were mobilized to search for Molly. Missing posters were quickly plastered around the city and surrounding areas. Shortly after, Molly's father Rob flew from California to join the search efforts. In mid-July, Iowa was experiencing hot summer days, and the surrounding cornfields made visibility difficult. Police announced on television that the search for Molly is ongoing. While there are no new updates, the search continues. Molly, a 20-year-old University of Iowa student, went missing last Wednesday in Brooklyn. She was last seen by her neighbor jogging with her dogs, wearing shorts, a sports bra and sneakers. At the time, Molly's whereabouts were unknown. The only confirmed sighting was when a neighbor saw her running east of town that evening. Police had no further leads. As the weeks passed, the reward for information about Molly had increased significantly to nearly $400,000. They even created a website to encourage the public to share any information about Molly. Police also analyzed data from Molly's fitness tracker to determine her running route. Despite all the efforts, the investigation remained unsolved until mid-August. A person in northeast Brooklyn was reviewing surveillance footage when she noticed something unusual. Concerned, she reported her findings to the police, leading to a crucial discovery. The footage showed a 1951 Chevrolet with chrome side mirrors and handles. Initially, nothing unusual appeared, but the car returned and appeared on surveillance cameras multiple times. Then, at 8:07 p.m., the same Chevrolet was recorded again. This time speeding away. Based on the footage, the car, which was behaving erratically at the same time and place that Molly went missing, caught the attention of the police. They began searching for the car in the small town. They quickly located it. A day after reviewing the video of the black Chevrolet, deputy sheriffs spotted the vehicle on the road. Instead of stopping immediately, he followed the car until the driver stopped. The deputy sheriff approached the driver's window and identified him as John Bath. When asked about Molly's disappearance, John claimed he had no knowledge of her and was not involved. He was allowed to leave, but his freedom was short-lived. Just 2 days later, police officers visited John's workplace at a dairy farm and noticed he was now driving a different car, which belonged to his girlfriend. At this point, the police began to take notice of John, but they had no evidence that he was involved in Molly's disappearance. The police took John to the local police station for further questioning. Although John was not required to answer their questions, he chose to cooperate. The interrogation lasted several hours, and ultimately, John confessed. However, his real name was Christian Bahina Rivera, and he lived and worked in rural Polk County near Brooklyn. Originally from Mexico, he had entered the United States illegally at the age of 17. Because he could not work legally, he was not registered in any official system, including at his job on a farm near Brooklyn. During questioning, police asked Christian if he knew where Molly was, and he admitted that he had seen her the night she disappeared. He explained that he had noticed her before deciding to approach her. When he ran over to strike up a conversation, Molly did not respond. When he persisted, she took out her phone and warned him to leave or she would call the police. The next day, August 21st, after more than 10 hours of questioning, Christian agreed to lead the police to a remote area outside of Brooklyn. When the police arrived and got out of their car, they found Molly's body. She was lying under some corn stalks, wearing only a sports bra and socks. Christian confessed that when he confronted Molly and she threatened to call the police, he acted out of anger and ended up killing her, then hiding her body in a cornfield. Molly suffered between 7 and 12 stab wounds to the chest, ribs, neck, and skull, ultimately leading to her death. This tragic news has left Molly's family, friends, and acquaintances heartbroken. As they learned more about the circumstances of Molly's death, their grief turned to anger. On August 22nd, Christian was charged with first-degree murder. Concerns that he might flee led to his bail being raised from $1 million to $5 million. As the investigation into Molly's disappearance turns into a murder case, developments related to her case continue to surface both in public and in the media. The following month, Christian denied any involvement in the case, despite initially confessing to Molly's murder. He later recanted his confession. Police made significant progress in the case. They searched Christian's black Chevrolet and discovered blood in both the trunk and on the rims. Testing revealed that the blood belonged to Molly, indicating that she had been in Christian's trunk that night. A series of bureaucratic delays postponed the court case. The public trial of Christian was delayed for several months and moved to another county for safety reasons. In August 2019, Christian's defense team submitted a 20-page motion arguing that his confession should not be used as evidence. They claimed he was not properly informed of his Miranda rights because of his foreign nationality. This means that although he admitted to killing Molly, he did not receive a warning that anything he said could be used against him in court. Therefore, his confession could not be used as evidence. In addition, the judge postponed Christian's trial until 2020 to allow more time to review the case. In 2020, the trial was postponed again. On May 17, 2021, Christian Bahena Rivera's trial finally began. His defense team argued that the police had violated his rights before charging him with murder. They claimed that the police had used illegal interrogation methods to force Christian to confess. When this approach failed, the defense attempted to blame Molly's boyfriend, Dalton, claiming that he had cheated on her 3 years earlier and then killed her. However, Dalton had a solid alibi for the time of Molly's disappearance. Although he was absent from work for nearly 2 hours, several co-workers were able to confirm his whereabouts during that time, and it was clear that he loved Molly very much. Christian eventually testified, but he changed his story. He claimed that 2 armed men came to his house, forced him to drive them until they found Molly, then killed her and forced him to drive to a cornfield, threatening his son's life if he revealed what had happened. Christian's confession, the surveillance footage, Molly's blood found in the trunk of his car, and his own incredible story all pointed clearly to his guilt. On Friday, May 28, Christian Bahena Rivera was convicted of murdering Molly Tibbetts. After just 7 hours of jury deliberation, Christian was found guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison. After the verdict, Christian's girlfriend, who had been raising their son Will, disappeared from Brooklyn, leaving his son on the farm without a family. With nowhere else to go, Will was eventually adopted by Molly's mother, Laura. This adoption allowed Will to continue his education and move toward a brighter future. Her parents consistently chose love over hate, which helps explain Molly's positive character. The support didn't end there. Hundreds of people came together at the University of Iowa to celebrate Molly's memory. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Hannah Graham. Hannah Graham grew up in a loving family that appreciated the little joys of life. Hannah was smart, healthy, and musically gifted. She was a vibrant young woman until she met Jesse Matthew, and her vibrant life took a dark turn. In every photo, from childhood to adolescence, Hannah is smiling. Those who knew her knew of Hannah's great ambition and ambition. Tragically, it seems her bright future was cut short by an unexpected evil that could devastate a life in an instant. On September 12, 2014, at approximately 9:30 p.m., Hannah left her home in Grand Marquette to meet friends. By 10 p.m., they went to FIC restaurant in Charlotte-Swilly. After spending some time together, Hannah later went to a party at the Caden Plaza Apartments on Tina Street. During the party, she told her friends that she was feeling unwell and wanted to leave. One friend offered to walk her home, but Hannah declined, as she lived only a few minutes away from Caden Plaza. Around midnight, Hannah said goodbye to her friends, but instead of going home, she walked in the opposite direction toward the Tempo restaurant. Security cameras on the buildings along her route captured footage of her as she headed to the shopping center on Charlotte Street, where Tempo was located. It was already September 13th, and at 12:56 a.m., the Hannah sent a message to a friend saying she was lost and not feeling well. At that time, Hannah was believed to be very drunk. It was unclear whether she had wandered into a different part of town by accident or due to her intoxication. Meanwhile, 32-year-old Jesse Matthew, a taxi driver, stopped at the Lazy Parrot for a drink. Afterward, he visited several other bars in the city center, where he harassed women. The women later reported that Jesse's behavior was inappropriate and crossed boundaries. Jesse eventually spotted Hannah. He initially walked past her, but then realized this was a great opportunity and decided to turn around and follow her. Surveillance footage captured Hannah wandering the streets, seemingly confused about her surroundings and the time. Jesse approached her, hugged her, and they headed to the Tempo restaurant. Inside, he bought 2 drinks. Witnesses later gave conflicting accounts. Some claimed Hannah was inside the bar area, while others claimed she was outside at a table. There was also no clear evidence that she was served a drink. Hannah's final text message to her friend, saying she was stuck, was sent in the middle of the night, but the meaning behind her words remains unclear. On September 14th, when Hannah's family could not reach her, they became alarmed and reported her missing to the police. Hannah was a person who always notified her family before going out. She was never away for long and always answered the phone. As time went on, her family's worries grew. Meanwhile, the police began searching for Hannah, with state and federal police joining the effort. Hannah's disappearance caused considerable concern in Charlotte Sweeney and the Albert Mall area, especially since there had been previous cases of missing women. Hannah's case quickly attracted public attention and the search for her intensified. Through a detailed investigation and the collection of video footage from numerous city cameras, police were able to piece together a timeline of the events of that tragic night. Hundreds of people gathered at the University of Virginia to support Hannah's family. Many volunteers joined the search, doing everything they could to help Hannah return safely. Hannah had helped others in need, and now it was their turn to help her. Jesse Matthew grew up in a low-income family. He faced constant bullying and humiliation at school, which led to a stutter and difficulties in his studies. Despite these challenges, he persevered and continued his education, eventually earning a full football scholarship to Liberty University in 2002. However, he was soon accused of violence against another student, prompting him to transfer to a different school. Upon entering Christopher Newport University, Jesse could no longer contain his desire, and soon rumors began to spread of a new sexual assault committed by Jesse. The victims remained unknown, having dropped out of school. Jesse made a living by working odd jobs for a while, switching jobs from time to time. In 2005, a young woman was attacked and raped in the Fairfax district while walking home from the store. The attacker threatened to kill her if she resisted. Although she survived the ordeal, she was hospitalized and treated, which included procedures to collect DNA samples. Police gathered evidence from the crime scene to create a DNA profile, but it did not match any suspects in police databases. Due to her fear for her safety, the woman ultimately chose to return to her home country of India. Surprisingly, family and friends described Jesse as a kind and helpful person. Even his ex-girlfriends found him charming and gentle. In fact, Jesse faced multiple sexual assault charges. One of the police officers who was friends with Jesse said that he had a very difficult childhood and was abused during his school years. Jesse was bullied a lot and forced to keep things a secret. Although this was never fully confirmed by his family or friends, Jesse himself stated that he was abused in his early years. This may explain how he went from being a good person to someone with malicious intent. Jesse's father struggled with alcoholism and was often absent from home for long periods of time. In 2006, his father was arrested for breaking the law. Did these experiences shape Jesse's personality and lead him to become a serial killer? On September 19th, police obtained a search warrant for the Jesse's apartment. They seized a mobile phone without a SIM card and a pair of men's shorts. DNA tests revealed both Jesse's and Hannah's biological material on these items. A second search warrant was executed for his apartment. And the next day, police announced that while he had not yet been formally charged with Hannah's kidnapping, he was the last person seen with her on the night she disappeared. During this second search, several bags of evidence were collected, including a phone, laundry, bedding, a pillow, clothing, a toothbrush, test tubes of hair, a wallet, and a cigar butt. Police obtained a third search warrant, allowing them to collect a pair of white shorts, a maroon shirt, and a towel with a reddish-brown stain. They also seized an orange Chevrolet Suburban belonging to Jesse. On September 20th, Jesse arrived at the Charlotte police station with Will, requesting an attorney and refusing to answer any questions about Hannah. Afterward, he left the station, got into his car, and sped away. Police pursued him, but he managed to evade capture. A nationwide search for him was initiated. It was later revealed that Jesse had obtained a new driver's license and withdrawn most of his bank funds. Jesse's family has urged him to share any information he has about Hannah with the police. His aunt, Alice Fletcher, has pledged to support Hannah's parents. Many people in Charlotte have joined the search efforts. Additionally, Hannah's college friends have provided significant support to the family. On September 24th, Jesse was seen on a beach in Texas. Since his car had been confiscated, he was living in a tent there. A bystander recognized him from a news report and called 911. Jesse was arrested and identified as a suspect in the kidnapping of Hannah. A $100,000 reward was offered for information about Hannah's location. He was taken to the Charlotte Regional Jail and held without bail while the search for Hannah continued. On October 18th, a body was discovered on a plot of land on Old Lynch Road in Albemarle County. The site was located behind an abandoned house and surrounded by brush. Police cordoned off the crime scene after the discovery of the body. The sheriff noted that further testing was needed to confirm the identity and expressed gratitude to those searching. A crop top and jeans matching those worn by Hannah were found nearby. A wristwatch was also found, but no underwear, shoes, or cell phone were found. A local resident informed police that on the morning of September 13th, he noticed Jesse's car parked on the road behind the house. The car doors were closed, and there was no one inside. It was determined that the Jesse was familiar with the area, having worked as a taxi driver nearby for several years. The body was sent to Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Kevin Y. for examination. He conducted an autopsy and concluded that the death resulted from intentional violence, with strangulation being the likely cause. Further tests showed broken noses, and the examiner confirmed that the victim was Hannah Graham. DNA evidence was collected, allowing police to link Jesse to Hannah's murder. Police then also connected him to another crime. This was the January 2010 kidnapping of Morgan Harrington. Her body was discovered on a farm in Albemarle County by the farm owner, who initially mistook them for animal bones. When he realized they were human bones, he quickly contacted the police. Morgan's body and Hannah's body were found just 6 miles apart. The DNA from Morgan's shirt matched that of Jesse Matthew, and surprisingly, it also matched evidence collected in 2005 in Fairfax. On February 10, 2015, Jesse Matthew was formally charged with the murder of Hannah Graham. He faced charges of first-degree murder and kidnapping. Prosecutors sought the death penalty. Attorneys proposed a plea deal that would have reduced his sentence if he confessed to the murders of Hannah Graham and Morgan Harrington. The victims' families met to discuss the deal, but when they learned that it only carried a 25-year sentence for murder, they rejected it. On March 2, 2016, Jesse Matthew accepted a plea deal in which he confessed to the murders of Morgan Harrington and Hannah Graham. In exchange, the death penalty was removed. Jesse's family had hoped Judge Chad would take into account his troubled upbringing and the sexual abuse he had endured. Despite this, the judge found Jesse Matthew guilty of first-degree murder and kidnapping of Morgan Harrington and Hannah Graham. He was sentenced to 4 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. Jesse's trial lasted less than 3 days. Along with the charges previously mentioned, he was charged with assaulting and raping a girl in Fairfax County in 2005. Jesse Matthew was sentenced to 3 life terms in the Fairfax girl case. As the judge read out his sentence, he emphasized the violent nature of Jesse's attacks. After the verdict, Jesse's mother screamed and had to leave the courtroom. Throughout the trial and sentencing, Jesse remained silent. In December 2020, Jesse was taken from Sac State Prison to Richmond Hospital under police escort, where he was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. The terrible crimes he committed had already been resolved, and by December 2022, Jesse Matthew was still alive, with no additional updates on his health at that time. Hello, crime enthusiasts. Are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Joshin Ashbrook. The story we are about to explore takes place in Newport Richey, Florida, a typical American suburb with a population of around 15,000. Located near Tampa, this area is known for its beautiful beaches and is generally a peaceful place with a low crime rate. Residents typically feel safe, and when crimes do occur, they are usually minor and not violent. However, the events of 2002 shocked the entire community. In the 20 Ruse, the Ashbrook family lived in Newport Richey. The family included Tara, Robert, and their 2 daughters. The eldest daughter, Joshin, was born on February 21, 1986, in Kokomo, Indiana, where her parents were living at the time. Due to job challenges, the family decided to move to Newport Richey to improve their financial situation. At that time, Joshin had just started walking, and her younger sister had just been born. Tara and Robert found jobs and their relationship was strong. They wanted to provide everything their daughters needed and help them discover their talents. They noticed Joshin had a passion for music and dance, so Robert encouraged her to pursue these interests. As a result, Joshin began taking music classes and taking voice lessons. Joshin shared this passion with her younger sister, who happily followed her lead. What started as a simple hobby soon became a focused pursuit, and Joshin became increasingly dedicated to honing her talent. Her parents recognized her enthusiasm and began taking her to events and competitions to help her mature. Joshin believed that becoming a singer would not only bring her joy, but also provide a good income in the future. Joshin became deeply engaged in her music, leading people to think she was genuinely preparing for a professional career. Her talent made her well known in her town, further boosting her reputation. She began to regularly perform at various events, which became her signature. Even in elementary school, she started writing poetry and song lyrics, making friends with others who shared her passion for music. During her school years, she recorded several demo songs of her own creation by visiting a music studio on her own, using her savings instead of asking her parents for financial support. She started reaching out to various music and radio organizations to promote her compositions, hoping to attract the attention of a producer. It was challenging to succeed in this field, but she was determined to pursue her dream of a music career. However, if that didn't work out, she had no intention of giving up. She is also interested in law and plans to attend university alongside her musical ambitions. By 2002, when Joshin turned 16, she entered a rebellious phase typical of many teenagers. She spent increasing amounts of time focused on her vocal training, writing songs, visiting recording studios, and hanging out with friends. This shift in priorities began to negatively impact her academic performance, causing her grades to slip. Additionally, she started attending parties with older peers, and her new friends were not the kind her parents approved of. During this time, she also began to experiment with alcohol. Meanwhile, her relatives noticed that she wasn't achieving significant success in music, leading them to urge her to consider a backup plan and focus on her education instead. Tara and Robert were concerned about their daughter's behavior. They often pressured Joshin to succeed in school, continue her education, and pursue music as a hobby. Her parents worried that if she didn't graduate, she wouldn't be able to get into college, which they believed would hinder her chances of achieving musical success. Their efforts to help Joshin deal with her teenage challenges often resulted in arguments and misunderstandings. After one such incident, Joshin ran away from home and this soon became a regular occurrence. Her parents tried to control their teenage daughter by keeping her at home, but their efforts failed. Joshin often ran away at night, only to return in the morning. Initially, this behavior upset her parents even more, but over time, Tara and Robert realized that pressuring her wasn't working. They decided to ease their control temporarily, so their daughter could settle down. Although she still ran away frequently, her parents became less anxious. On July 30, 2002, Joshan went for a walk with friends, leaving home late in the evening. She returned around 2:00 a.m. after attending a party. When she returned home, her parents woke up and immediately noticed the smell of alcohol and marijuana on her. This angered her mother, Tara, who lost her temper and accused her daughter of being disobedient and behaving inappropriately. Tara insisted that her daughter cut off her friends, whom she considered a bad influence. Meanwhile, her father, Robert, chose to stay out of the argument. He had witnessed similar confrontations many times before. He did not want to resort to violence and damage his relationship with Joshan. So Robert let his wife resolve the conflict herself. However, they could not control Joshan's behavior. She stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind her. After calming down, Tara went to bed, hoping that they would resolve their differences by the next morning. When Tara and Robert woke up in the morning, they noticed that Joshan had not returned. They began to worry. Tara remembered the phone numbers of all the friends Joshan might have slept with, but when they called, there was no sign of her at any of them. Her parents then decided to check other places Joshan might have been. Unfortunately, they could not find her or any clues as to where she might be. As night fell, the Tara became increasingly panicked, and the Robert made the decision to report her missing at the nearest sheriff's office. However, Joshan was well known to the local police due to previous incidents of running away, so her parents' report didn't receive much attention at first. The police tried to reassure them and suggested they go home to wait for their daughter to come back. The parents reported a recent argument to the police, saying that their daughter had not returned home that morning, which was unusual for her. None of her friends knew of her whereabouts. This situation seemed different from Joshan's previous elopements, but the police remained skeptical. They assumed that teenage girls often needed time to calm down after an argument and believed that she would return soon. However, her parents also realized that they would have to wait at least a day after Joshan went missing before filing a report. So Tara and Robert returned home, hoping that they would find Joshan there. Unfortunately, she had not returned. Her parents couldn't wait any longer. They didn't waste any time. Her family searched for Joshan all over the city, but their efforts were unsuccessful. The next morning, when the electrician was on his way to work, he passed by a familiar stretch of road. Then he saw something suspicious on the side of the road. When he got closer, he realized it was a body. This scared him, and he quickly called the police. When the police arrived, they confirmed that the body belonged to a girl between the ages of 16 and 18. They quickly decided to investigate recent missing persons reports, which led them to believe that the victim was Joshan. Unfortunately, the photo provided by her parents was not very helpful, as her face was disfigured. The police chose not to rush to call in relatives to identify the body, wanting to avoid causing them distress. The body had many injuries and a deep cut on the neck. The body was sent to a forensic expert for an autopsy. Police initially believed the attack was abuse because her clothes were torn. However, the medical examiner found no signs of abuse. Surprisingly, the cause of death was a shallow cut to the neck, but the cut was made after her death. She had a broken collarbone and extensive bruising to her upper chest. The injuries to her arms and torso suggested that she had been able to fight off her attacker for a long time before she was killed. Forensic experts discovered valuables, skin cells, and some hair under her fingernails, all of which belonged to the suspect. A thorough analysis of the evidence collected from the body suggested that the girl had not been murdered in the alley. She may have been moved there and dumped to throw the investigation off track. Tire tracks were found in the nearby wooded area, likely dating from around the time the body was moved. After experts confirmed that the body was Joshin's, her family was informed of the tragic news. They came to identify the body, which was a heartbreaking moment for them. During her initial conversation with the police, Tara suggested checking on their neighbor, John Hansen. She recalled that he had been accused of molesting schoolgirls, but Tara was unable to provide any specific details. When police arrived at the address, they found only John's wife. She told police that he had moved away a few months before the incident. He lived out of town and the couple was planning to divorce. According to her, he was out of town at the time of the attack, so he could not have been involved. Police also investigated John and found no history of violence or any criminal record. Contrary to what Tara had said, he was ruled out as a suspect, and police turned their attention to analyzing the evidence they had collected. The tire tread patterns were particularly noteworthy, along with skin particles and hair believed to belong to the potential perpetrator. A thorough analysis of the tire prints revealed that a similar pattern matched 7 different tire brands. This information helped police significantly narrow down their search area. They also determined, based on the depth of the tire tracks, that the vehicle was not a passenger car or a truck, but possibly a pickup truck. On July 31, police received a call from a woman reporting that she had seen Joshin that morning. This information helped establish a timeline. The witness mentioned that a girl who introduced herself as Joshan had called early in the morning and wanted to speak to her son, but the young man was out of town at the time. Joshan asked if she could leave him a letter. The mother agreed to deliver the letter. Joshin did indeed come to her home around 9 a.m. and gave her son an envelope. According to the witness, when Joshin arrived, she got out of a red pickup truck. The driver was a man in his 40s with short hair. During the exchange of envelopes, the witness did not notice anything suspicious, except that Joshin seemed to be in a hurry. She could not see the driver's face clearly and could only provide a rough description. The witness remembered not only the letter, but also the phone number Joshin called. There was no evidence or anything unusual in the letter. It simply stated that Joshin wanted to break up with the guy. When police called the number provided by the witness, a man named Philip Thompson answered. He explained that on July 31, he was driving home early in the morning with his daughter when he encountered a hitchhiker on the road. He decided to give her a ride. The hitchhiker was Joshin, who had asked to use his cell phone to call an unknown woman. She then asked for a ride home to deliver an envelope to a friend, and Philip agreed to help her. They stopped at a supermarket, but after Joshin got out and walked in an unknown direction, police asked Philip to come to the station to give a formal statement. He agreed but never showed up, either that evening or the next day. The police viewed this situation as alarming. They attempted to call Philip again, but could not reach him. This raised further suspicion about him. The police officers then investigated his officially registered phone number. They discovered that Philip was a criminal with a record of several misdemeanors and a murder conviction. He had previously been charged with the murder of math teacher Gary Thorne, who was found dead in his home. During a search of his home, police found items stolen from Gary's home, linking him to the brutal murder. Although Philip never confessed, he was sentenced to many years in prison. His lawyers continued to work to get him released, and due to several errors by the judge, they were able to have the case reviewed. After a retrial, his sentence was reduced to 6 years and he was released early. After being released, Philip found work as a laborer on a construction site, where he met a woman named Marta, who was a foreman. Marta was a single mother raising a daughter, and together they later had a daughter named Patricia. Over time, their relationship deteriorated for unspecified reasons, leading to a divorce and a custody battle over Patricia. In 2002, Philip unexpectedly gained custody of his daughter despite his troubled criminal record. He continued to live with her, but he was implicated in a murder case when Joshan was found dead, and he was reportedly the last person to see her alive. Police tried to contact Philip, but he never picked up his phone. They then decided to investigate the supermarket that Philip claimed he visited with Joshan. Police obtained the store's surveillance camera footage and analyzed it. They discovered that Philip and Joshan had indeed been to the supermarket on July 31, the day of the disappearance. Philip was seen parking at the mall with Joshan and his daughter Patricia. After shopping, they left and Joshan gave a letter to her boyfriend's mother. Unfortunately, at the time, there were few surveillance cameras on the streets, making it difficult to track Philip's movements. Philip was wanted, and his case attracted considerable media attention across the United States. There were many clues from witnesses. Among them, some useful information emerged that helped locate Philip. When his friend contacted the police, he had been living with Philip and his daughter for several months. He gave Philip's address, which led the police to his last known address, where they found crucial evidence. During a search of the apartment, they discovered a small nightstand with bleach stains and small blood stains that were later confirmed to be those of the murdered Joshan. Additionally, a red pickup truck was registered to Philip. From that point on, the police began treating him as a fugitive killer. Police spoke with Philip's daughter Patricia, who recalled a recent trip with her father. During the nighttime ride home, she fell asleep in the car. She woke up to find her father stopping the car and letting a strange girl in, who introduced herself as Joshan. Joshan shared that she ran away from home and asked for a ride. She was looking forward to going to Los Angeles to showcase her songs and become a famous singer. After a while, Joshan asked to use the phone, and they stopped several times at a store and a house. They eventually came to a river, where they swam and fished. Then Patricia fell asleep. When Patricia woke up, she found Joshan was no longer in the car. When she asked her father where the strange girl had gone, he did not answer. For months, police had no idea where Philip was. He seemed to have disappeared completely. He didn't make any phone calls or pay any bills. He kept himself so well hidden that police began to wonder if he was still in the country. Then, almost a year later, during a check on a suspicious car, a patrol officer discovered a clue about Philip. It turned out that the person in the car was a friend of Philip's. He said that during this time, Philip had been living with a friend and was not officially registered, which helped him evade detection. Philip was eventually found and arrested on October 28, 2013, with police collecting a hair sample from him and comparing it to samples found under Joshan's fingernails, which showed a match. Philip's pickup truck tires also matched the prints found at the crime scene. Despite the overwhelming evidence against Philip, he refused to talk to police and would not confess to his guilt. During the trial, the prosecutor's office presented a timeline of events to the jury. After leaving home, Joshan got into a car driven by Philip, who was accompanied by a young woman named Patricia, who made Joshan feel safe. He drove Joshan to a store and helped deliver mail, acting in a way that made her trust him. However, when his daughter Patricia fell asleep, Philip took the opportunity to attack her, possibly with the intent to rape her. Joshan fought back, stopping the attack, which enraged Philip. In his rage, he killed her and then returned to his apartment. After Patricia woke up, Philip took her to her mother and then returned to dispose of the body and clean up the scene. During the trial, many were shocked by Philip's behavior. Joshan's mother, Tara, accidentally glanced at Philip, who immediately responded with a wink and a smile, showing no remorse for his actions. Although he pleaded not guilty, the evidence against him was strong enough for a jury to find Philip Thompson guilty of first-degree murder. On December 1, 2008, he was sentenced to death, as the death penalty is practiced in Florida. His verdict was later challenged with the support of his attorney. In 2024, Philip's death sentence was commuted to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Emily Murray. Emily Murray is a college student. She was born on February 19, 1980 in Sleepy Hollow, New York. Emily lives with her parents and 3 siblings, 2 sisters and a brother. They are very close and are in constant contact with each other. Emily's father works as the director of a science center. Thanks to his job, her family lives comfortably and can afford everything they need. Emily is a gifted student with a great passion for science, especially medicine and philosophy. In addition, she is a devout Christian, like her family. Since she was a child, she has helped her parents and found ways to earn money. But she often donates what she earns to charity, leaving very little for herself. After graduating from high school, Emily enrolled in Kenyon College to continue her studies. She focuses on philosophy and hopes to work for the church and participate in various missionary activities. During this time, she also traveled to Italy, New Zealand, and Japan, with each trip related to her church charity work. In 2000, Emily entered her 3rd year of college, where she studied hard and got closer to her dream. She was actively involved in church activities and participated in youth ministry. She also envisioned a large family, imagining herself with her future husband and their children. Tragically, no one expected her life to end so suddenly. On November 3, 2000, at the college Emily attended, her roommates woke up to find that she had disappeared. The girls remembered that Emily could sometimes get caught up in her work, as there were times when she stayed late to finish an important project with a friend. Emily had worked a shift at a restaurant the night before, leading to speculation that she might have stayed late and then gone straight to college to study. Her roommates, therefore, continued their normal routine, going to work and continuing their studies, expecting to see Emily later. However, she did not return that night, and they became increasingly concerned when she failed to show up at the planned party. A few days earlier, Emily had gone to the local supermarket and bought all the necessary items, indicating that she intended to attend. Emily's friends were worried and contacted Emily's sister to check if Emily had returned to her family. However, Emily's sister said that she had not returned home either. Her sister called her parents to report that Emily was missing. It had been nearly 24 hours since Emily had gone missing, and her parents were distraught when they learned of the situation. Despite their efforts, Emily's friends were unable to find any useful information. Just a few hours after her sister's call, Emily's parents got in their car and drove to her school. At that time, a group of volunteers, including dozens of students, had searched the area for Emily, but found no trace. It was also confirmed that Emily's car was missing along with her. Emily's parents went to the university's security office to report their daughter's disappearance. However, they were disappointed to find that the staff did not care. The staff assumed she was just out for the night and said that their daughter would be back soon. The family believed that this was not Emily's normal behavior, as she always informed them of her plans. Not a day went by without her contacting family and friends. Now, she was unusually quiet and ignored all attempts to reach her. Emily's roommates accompanied the family to the security office, and all 3 emphasized that this behavior was unusual for Emily. All of Emily's belongings were still in her room, including her bank checks and a wallet full of documents and cards. This suggested that she had no intention of leaving for a long time. All of her textbooks were also left behind. Finally, the security staff agreed that a search was necessary. They decided to start by thoroughly searching Emily's room. However, they found nothing suspicious. As a result, they created a missing persons notice and began distributing flyers to students on campus. Meanwhile, Emily's family contacted the sheriff's office to report their daughter missing. The police carefully reviewed all the details surrounding Emily's disappearance and checked her room, Realizing the seriousness of the situation, they began tracking her down from the evening she went missing. Emily worked at a restaurant near her school. Its proximity to the school and diverse menu made it a popular hangout for students. The restaurant was open until 2 a.m. every night, attracting a large crowd of young people. However, the police quickly realized that the late-night schedule could attract potentially dangerous individuals. Local girls knew that it was unsafe to go to the restaurant alone at night because of the many drunk and rowdy. On November 1, Emily was working her last shift at the establishment. She was well liked by everyone for her positive attitude and friendly demeanor. The police compiled a list of everyone present, as these people were likely the last witnesses to see Emily. They could provide information for the search or report any suspicious activity that night. The restaurant closed at 2 a.m., as usual. Most of the customers had left, but Emily and a few other employees stayed behind to finish their work and clean up. Among the employees was Emily's friend, a waitress, who worked with her at the restaurant. Emily's time card showed that she finished her shift at 3:07 a.m. and left the restaurant. This was confirmed by Gregory McKnight, a chef who had left earlier that night as scheduled by the staff. The staff working in the store said that at around 3 a.m., they all finished their work and started to go home. Emily's parents were frustrated by the slow pace of the investigation. Despite the collection of valuable evidence suggesting many leads to follow, some believed that Emily might have left on her own. When the police inquired about her mental health, they discovered that although she had been depressed in recent years, she did not have any serious mental health issues. This depression may have been related to her heavy responsibilities at school and work, as well as her recent breakup with her boyfriend, which further affected Emily's emotional state. After gathering all the information, the police searched Emily's dorm room. They found notes from her that contained some contradictory statements, leading them to question whether she might have taken her own life due to her depression. Emily could have made such a decision because of her mental condition. However, her family and friends dismissed this idea. They explained that during her bouts of depression, she behaved quite differently. Specifically, during those difficult times, she would cut off contact with her family and become very withdrawn, and this withdrawal increased over time. But now, things were different. Before her disappearance, she showed no signs of distress. She was still sociable, full of energy, and maintained relationships with others. In fact, she seemed fine and felt inspired by her work. The police spoke to Emily's friends, who confirmed that she had been doing well recently. She was no longer troubled by her breakup with her ex-boyfriend and had even stopped taking the antidepressants prescribed by her doctor. Her life had improved, and she felt no need to continue the medication. During the investigation, the police found no useful information or leads. They decided to contact the FBI for assistance. The police suspected that if Emily had been kidnapped, she might have been taken across state lines. But this investigation also yielded no results. The police then spoke with Emily's ex-boyfriend. Friends described their relationship as loving, but often filled with conflict. Eventually, the couple realized they were not compatible and decided to break up. The police discovered that her ex had attended a party on the night of her disappearance. Multiple witnesses confirmed that he and Emily had been seen together. He was one of the last people to leave the restaurant in the early morning, along with other partygoers. While he may have watched over Emily's friend, there was no evidence that he intended to harm her. Throughout the evening, he spent time with Emily as a friend. During police questioning, her ex provided a verified alibi. He had left with friends and traveled to another city, quickly eliminating him from the suspect list. The police then focused on Emily's co-workers at the restaurant. Several employees noted that one co-worker had feelings for Emily and wanted to pursue a relationship with her, but she had rejected him. He was summoned to the police station for questioning, where he denied any wrongdoing, insisting that he was only friends with Emily. He mentioned that they had talked a lot the night before she went missing, as he rarely saw her compared to the other employees. Before leaving the restaurant at 11 p.m., he wished Emily well and rushed to a concert for which he had tickets. His alibi was confirmed, and he was no longer considered a suspect. The next suspect was Dave. Several girls reported that he had difficulty communicating with women. He often tried to pursue a relationship with a coworker but was rude, making many people feel uncomfortable. Dave was eventually fired from the restaurant because of his aggressive behavior. The restaurant manager, Gregory McKnight, mentioned that he had heard about Dave making inappropriate comments to other employees. Gregory found Dave's behavior suspicious and reported it to the police, thinking it might be related to Emily's disappearance. However, witnesses stated that no one had seen Dave at the restaurant the night Emily went missing. Due to his suspicious behavior, the police decided to continue investigating him. They suspected that he may have been following Emily, possibly waiting for her after her shift while hiding on the street. He was taken to the police station for questioning, where he provided an alibi that was corroborated by several witnesses, leading to his removal from the suspect list. The investigation was then suspended due to a lack of solid evidence, as all avenues of investigation had proven fruitless. Each suspect had a credible alibi. Police believe that Emily may have either escaped or taken her own life. However, they require more evidence to support this theory. In the meantime, some of Emily's close friends disagree with these possibilities. As time went on, days passed without any sign of Emily. The university campus was covered with missing person flyers featuring her picture. While everyone believed she was missing, the police realized that the crucial 48-hour window to find her alive had passed. However, the investigation was still ongoing. The family did not receive any demands from the kidnappers. There were no calls or ransom demands, so the possibility of her being kidnapped was dismissed. Due to the uncertain safety conditions at the school, students were asked to walk in pairs. To address the dangerous situation, security forces were assigned to accompany students on campus. For Emily's family, this was the most difficult period, filled with constant fear and anxiety. Her parents could not eat or sleep. They desperately searched for information about their daughter's whereabouts, but all their efforts were unsuccessful. An important discovery redirected the investigation. A month before Emily went missing, Ronald had a minor traffic accident. After the accident, the other driver got out of the car to check the damage and assist Ronald. During this time, Ronald discovered that the driver who caused the accident had several guns in the trunk of his car, which had been opened by the collision. Concerned, Ronald decided to call the police and report the incident. 2 months passed, and on December 9, 2000, officers from the sheriff's office were dispatched to a trailer park. They were supposed to inform the driver of the accident from October that he was being charged with complicity in a burglary. Thanks to Ronald's testimony, they were able to solve a series of crimes. The officers went to the address where the car's owner was registered, but found no one there. The trailer appeared to be abandoned, and next to it, they found several cars in poor condition. However, before leaving, the officers noticed another car behind the man's house that stood out from the others because it was new. The car was checked against the database, and the police discovered that it was a green car that belonged to another vehicle that was also listed as missing. Officers passed this information on to the police investigating Emily's disappearance. The most surprising aspect for the police was the identity of the owner of the trailer where Emily's car was discovered. The trailer belonged to Gregory McKnight, a chef at the restaurant where Emily worked, who had previously tried to blame his co-workers for her disappearance. The police then obtained a search warrant for the trailer. An officer entered through a window and immediately noticed a terrible smell of decay. Inside, they found bloodstains, and upon further investigation, discovered Emily Murray's body wrapped in a rug. An autopsy confirmed that she had died from a gunshot wound to the right side of her head. More than a month had passed since Emily's disappearance, and now the investigation had to inform her family of the tragic outcome. Gregory McKnight, the prime suspect, was quickly arrested and questioned. He answered briefly and vaguely and appeared very guarded, as if he were closely monitoring what he said. When the police informed Gregory that they had discovered a body in a missing car, he stopped cooperating and requested a lawyer. The situation was made easier by the fact that Gregory was already wanted for burglary, which meant he could not evade arrest and could be held while the details of Emily's death were investigated. The trailer was thoroughly examined, revealing blood stains and a bullet hole in the bodywork, which a forensic scientist identified as the scene of the murder. By this point, there was enough evidence to conclude that Emily had been murdered in Gregory's trailer. The forensic expert would need to provide a detailed report after the autopsy. The investigation continued, and after 2 days, a major discovery was made. Forensic scientists searched the area around the trailer for a murder weapon and decided to examine a nearby well. Instead of finding a murder weapon, they discovered a human skeleton. This skeleton appeared to belong to an older person, probably a male. The identity of this second victim remains unknown. Prior to these events, a young man named Gregory Julios had gone missing in the area. A forensic expert verified this connection. The details of his disappearance matched those of Emily's case. He had been reported missing about 6 months earlier in a nearby town. According to his girlfriend, Gregory Julius had left home to attend a college party with a friend named Gregory McKnight. He was the last person known to have seen Gregory Julius alive, and Gregory McKnight was called to the station for questioning. During questioning, Gregory McKnight stated that he did not know where his friend was. At this point, a search was underway for the missing man. He said that he had attended a party with his friend, Gregory Julius. However, he claimed that they had parted ways after the party, and that he had not seen Gregory Julius since then. The police found no evidence that Gregory McKnight was involved in his friend's disappearance, so he was released. Gregory Julius's girlfriend recognized the clothing found on the body as belonging to him, and the medical examiner confirmed the identity of the body as indeed being Gregory Julius. Due to these new developments, Gregory McKnight was questioned again. He gave brief answers, carefully choosing his words, and avoided providing any substantial information. The police suspected that he was lying and hiding something, apparently trying to buy time. However, the police had strong evidence against him, as they discovered not only a body but also several bags of Gregory Julius's belongings in his trailer. Gregory McKnight was born into a dysfunctional family and grew up in Quincy, New York. At the age of 15, he was convicted of murdering a resident during a robbery and was sent to a juvenile detention facility. After his release, he married his wife, a former employee of the correctional facility where he had been held. The couple initially lived in his wife's mother's house before purchasing a trailer in Ray, Ohio. His wife said she suspected he was involved in Emily's kidnapping because he had become anxious and exhibited unusual behavior after Emily's disappearance. Despite her concerns, she tried to hold on to hope that her husband was not involved in the case. With this information, the police began to suspect that they were dealing with a dangerous killer. The prosecution collected all the items taken from Gregory McKnight's home, specifically a shovel, pruning shears, an axe, and a hunting knife. These items were sent for testing and found to have traces of Gregory Julius's DNA on them. The prosecutor sought the death penalty for Emily's murder. However, the judge ruled that the county, being the poorest and least populous in the state, could not afford a death penalty trial and could not guarantee that Gregory McKnight would receive a fair trial. As a result, the case was moved to another county, causing administrative delays. The trial did not begin until 2002. During the trial, multiple witnesses testified that Gregory McKnight had secret romantic feelings for Emily, suggesting that he may have been obsessed with her, although he appeared to have suppressed those feelings. Gregory McKnight often defended Emily when other boys bothered her. Generally, he seemed to be a friendly person, The restaurant's bartender mentioned that after Emily went missing, Gregory McKnight told him that he felt she was dead. Other co-workers noted that Gregory McKnight was seen leaving with Emily that night. The prosecution argued that Gregory McKnight knew it was Emily's last shift at the restaurant, which prompted his actions. They believed he met her after work and may have given her a ride home. During that ride, he confessed his feelings for Emily, but when she rejected him, he kidnapped her and then murdered her. Unlike the Emily Murray case, there were fewer witnesses in the Gregory Julius case. Evidence was also limited, but new information emerged during the investigation. It was discovered that the car driven by Gregory Julius had been sold shortly after his disappearance. Gregory McKnight's car was identified, and blood found in the back seat matched Gregory Julius's DNA, implicating Gregory McKnight in Gregory Julius's death. However, the motive for killing Gregory Julius remained unclear. With the evidence being so strong, the attorneys did not attempt to argue that Gregory McKnight was innocent and instead chose a different strategy. The defense argued that Gregory McKnight was struggling with mental health issues, claiming that he was unable to control his actions. Additionally, they argued that the victim, Emily, was mentally unstable and was contemplating ending her life, asserting that Gregory McKnight had helped her do so. This notion angered Emily's parents, who were deeply offended by the attorney's argument, as Emily was deeply religious and would never choose to end her life voluntarily. Despite the defense's various tactics, the jury ultimately sided with the prosecution. Gregory McKnight was convicted of first-degree murder for Emily's death, as well as kidnapping and burglary. He faces the death penalty. Emily's family is religious and opposed to the death penalty. However, Gregory McKnight was sentenced to death by lethal injection for the murder of Emily, along with a life sentence for the murder of Gregory Julius, 10 years for kidnapping, and a year and a half for burglary. After his conviction, he filed several appeals, all of which were unsuccessful. More than 20 years have passed, but Gregory McKnight is still alive. He expressed his desire to be executed, stating that he wanted to die for his crimes, but later changed his mind. In 2020, Gregory McKnight began arguing that his sentence was unjust due to racial bias in his trial. He alleged that the all-white jury treated him unfairly and insulted him. Emily's parents remain confused about why Gregory McKnight killed their daughter and do not believe his assertions of his obsession with her. They felt that Gregory McKnight harbored resentment towards the college students he worked with at the restaurant, many of whom came from wealthy families, including Emily, whom he chose to take revenge on. However, because of their religious beliefs, Emily's parents believed that her death was not in vain, as it led to the arrest of Gregory McKnight and held him accountable for all the sins he committed, ultimately saving the lives of others. In honor of Emily, they planted a tree near the university. Every year on November 2 and on her birthday, they release a red balloon into the sky in her memory. The family also plans to scatter the rest of Emily's ashes, which are currently kept in an urn at home. The first half of her ashes was buried in the church cemetery.